Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Counter-Strike fans all over the world, welcome back to another episode of HLTV Confirmed. This time it's Season 5, Episode 3. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about DreamHack that's been going on. We're going to look at Cologne. We've got a lot of recent news to look into. Astralis with their roster. Glaive's back, but he won't be playing Cologne. We have Zeus here, who'll be in the hot seat. We'll get to him in a second. Prof's not here, everybody. I know that certain diehard fans are going to be very, very disappointed about this, but he's taking some time off. So he let us know he wasn't going to be here. And he's apparently having an OnlyFans account. I'm not sure if that's true or not. We'll have to investigate. But Striker, you're here, and I want to know from you, mate. Emotionally, how are you feeling right now?
Right now, I'm slightly concerned that my power is going to go out because there's a storm going on. So I'm not sure if it's going away or what's happening outside. I don't really see outside right now, so it's hard to say.
All right, well, we'll keep you on the weather watch. If we hear any thunder or whatever, we'll probably make that one go. Now, we have Zeus. Hi, Zeus. We'll do like an informal introduction, and then we'll get into like the proper introduction. So generally, emotionally, how are you feeling right now?
I'm doing okay, I think. A lot of mixed emotions being back in Brazil now, kind of forced, but I'm liking it. So it's crazy times we're living in. It's all going to be mixed. It's nothing simple, but I'm good.
All right, so let's jump into this. Lucas, roll the bumper and let's get into the hot seat. All right, so we're back and we're getting into this now. Look, we'll save all the amazing life advice until the end when we've all had like this emotional 2-hour journey that we can go on, and we'll give out those poignant points. Actually, I've used poignant wrong the entirety of my life, but fuck it, I digress. Let's get stuck into this now. We got Zeus here. I was in charge of finding the guest again, and I did it extremely last minute. So first of all, I want to say massive thank you for confirming and getting here within basically 24 hours, mate. That's fantastic news. But having you here, I want to get stuck into a lot of coaching questions, right? Because you're one of the OGs, I suppose. And when the whole MIBR thing went down, and then you were in limbo, I suppose. What was that like, especially during COVID, right? Like, did you have offers coming straight your way? Were you reaching out? Did you want to take some time off? What was going on there?
So the news came out of kind of out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting it, and then when I realized I was a free agent in the middle of COVID, I really didn't know what to do. Is the truth. So, like, I wanted to stay in the US, and the first thing I did, I got in touch with the visa immigration offices just to try to figure out what was happening. And the bottom line was I had to leave the country. Since we are always on work visas, I had to leave the country, and I wouldn't be able to return because all the consulates were closed. The UCIS is closed, which does the processing for all of the visas. So any choice they said I chose would be fine because I had to leave the country and either go to South Korea or Brazil, basically, I think is what they told me at the time at the very first week. So
why South Korea? I'm sorry.
Because South Korea, I think, was one of the few countries that was actually allowing foreigners to come in the very beginning of when like all the lockdowns and everything was going on. And so I just decided to come home. But before, I tried to find a team, right, to figure out what I was going to do and everything like that. And I wanted to stay in the US, so I fished around for the offers I would have and decided on EG. And with EG, it came to the point where I was able to actually work from Brazil. So it was a pretty positive solution in the midst of a crisis that left me losing the rest of my hair in the last week.
Look, man, I think when it starts going, you just have to embrace it, right? You just get like, I'm getting worried. I'm like, oh shit, is mine starting to thin in the front? Is it just more of is it getting lighter? Because who knows? But the hair as a dude, fuck, that's a scary one. Look, so you've had the COVID situation go down. You're able to find the team now. I would say relatively easily, right? I don't know how much you want to talk about this kind of stuff, but when you reached out, what are you being greeted with as like a type of response? Like, oh shit, like, oh, we didn't know you're available, or we hadn't considered you'd be interested. Like, what are those conversations like?
Yeah, so I think it didn't come only as a surprise to me leaving to MIBR. It came to a lot of the teams. So there were a few European teams that messaged me once they found out, like the players talk internally. But since I had decided I wanted to ideally stay within an A, I reached out to the teams that, one, I had coached before, which was Liquid, and I talked with EG, which is a team that I thought had a lot of potential and worked out. And with EG, things really clicked off, and that I talked to the players, and they're like, holy shit, we didn't know you were available, right? Exactly that kind of a feeling. And it ended up working out pretty simply. Like you said, I think it was actually even surprised myself how easily I was able to find a team in the middle of chaos, because remember, this is the middle of COVID. Everything's going down. Like, we're thinking that esports is going to be shut down. Like, we don't know what's going on. So I was scared for my career, for real. But thankfully, it worked out, and it worked out a lot better than we all imagined, I think.
Okay. Strike, you got anything on this?
Yeah, it's just it was also kind of lucky for you that Kassad left only like a couple of weeks after you joined DG, so you two didn't really collide, so that he didn't take a job off you. And
oh yeah, you're right.
He could have taken a job off you, right? Because if it had happened in the wrong time.
I think you're right in that. Kassad is an amazing coach. I don't know how he still hasn't found something there. People are crazy not to pick him up.
I feel like it's got something to do with Liquid also and changes there and stuff like that. It's just like it's probably hard to find a spot on a team outside of Europe, and maybe he's just not getting the right level of a team, because I feel like he just wants to stay at the top.
I think definitely it's him trying to be selective about where he's going to coach and find the right spots, because he definitely has opportunity. He has the history for it to be called to the most teams.
I was just wondering about one thing, right? Because from what I remember, just after you left MIBR, you still had to stay at the house for a while. I don't know how long that was, but I just remember that somebody telling me that. How was that? How was that experience? That must have been a little bit awkward.
Yeah, it was awkward. Like, I mean, I'm still friends with the guys because, like, all the history and everything, we have to separate work from the personal, but I'm not gonna lie, it's not as simple as that, right? So the one luck that I had was it was in the middle of COVID, so I literally just rented a Mustang GT and kept driving around while they practiced. I had nothing to do. The streets were clear, just driving, speeding around, trying to blow a little edge off. Once they were done, come back home, maybe have a beer talk or something like that. But I tried to avoid seeing them practice just because it's just still that sensitive situation.
In that case, like I had to do a similar when I had to remove HAVU from the team, right? Back when we were living in a casino in Las Vegas. It's such an awkward like conversation to have. It kind of feels like a breakup in a well, I guess it is, right?
It did, yeah.
So this situation is different because I actually remember seeing you and Taco in one of the conference rooms in that ENCE hotel that we had after the grand final. The last event that you had done with Liquid, and you guys were like at one end of the conference table and all the other Liquid guys were at the other end of the conference table. So that was kind of like you guys giving them the bad news, right? This time you're on the receiving end of that, and it sounds like you were blindsided by this. Were there like moments that you could tell that this wasn't going to work long term, or did this completely just come from left field?
I think the blindsided didn't come from. If anything, I should have been aware of it just from the results that we were having, things like that, right? I think the blindsided came just from the personal relationships. We sometimes let that get mixed with the business points, and so we don't see things as clearly. But I think obviously I should have been able to see a coach is responsible for the roster at the end of the day, and obviously MIBR wasn't performing, so my head was going to be on the chopping block at some point, and it maybe even should have come sooner, if I'm honest, because there's not enough time. Like CS, we like to joke around 3 months is a year. So the fact that we went a year and a half is like an eternity in how the opinions change, how the public views us. As for blindsiding, like I said, it's weird, but at the same time understandable. With that news with Taco, it was a different situation. On this one, receiving, at least since we're friends, things were done clearly. Like Ricardo, was my best friend of 20 years. He just called me down. I was working, it was 9 a.m. He just shows up at the house. I was working at the PC trying to prep some demos. He's like, come down, we need to talk. And he just gave it to me straight. I'm like, I understand. At one side, this is a surprise. At another side, I'm not gonna lie, this is a relief as well because things are going like shit. So, like, I think it was something that was needed for both parts. So that's why I don't think things went as bad as it could have, just because we both understood everything that was going down. Like, it wasn't something that was done overnight. So much shit had happened before, all the history. It's not simple like that.
What was there actually like an air of that, like you coming back to coach and the team getting, obviously not all on your shoulders, but kind of the team like gelling together again and bringing back the form of the glory days? Was that like an expectation that felt like it was there when you and Taco rejoined?
Yeah, definitely. In the beginning of MIBR, right, at least my stint in it, when like Taco and I left Liquid, we were the undisputed #2 in the world, like throughout that entire year, only losing to Astralis. Like, we left a very comfortable position. So we're like, we're going to really sum up to this team that we know it's insane. We're going to bring back. There was all that hype. And I think the public put so much expectation onto ourselves, and we believed it, and we put it on ourselves as well. And when the results did, like, our first event was actually pretty good. I think we reached semifinals of the major. Like, it was good. But the second we didn't, the amount of backlash that we got from the public, from our fans, and the amount of backlash that we put on ourselves, like the amount of frustration that we left there, it just made it so much harder to climb that hill. It definitely was there. I think it was, at least in the beginning. It wasn't throughout the whole thing because we learned to deal with it afterwards. Then it was a different set of problems that kept showing up each time. But in the beginning, it definitely affected that first roster.
Okay. Strike, you got anything here?
Well, I was just going to go run back through like the roster changes that obviously plagued the team from well, even from before, I think even from before you joined, obviously it kind of started with you and Taco joining back, and then CodeZero left, and obviously finding a replacement for him was difficult.
Yeah.
A lot of players changing in that year and a half or like 2 years. So yeah, I don't even know which angle to take on this. Just curious about what your take is on why none of these players worked and why they still seem to kind of struggle to find the same kind of form.
Dude, it's so complex. Like, there's so many reasons. I'm gonna go like from the player perspective. We never found a true fifth. I'm just gonna put it as like it does seem like that thing. Like it's the 4 and 1, but it's not because we're putting pressures. Because I think that anyone that plays at a high level knows that a team takes a certain level of synergy if you want to hit a high level. And through all the players that we have, they were just so different in some styles. Like even a personal clash or something like that. It just doesn't. You can tell that either our arguments are that we need to get better, they're not coming through in the right way to the person, or sometimes they're just those people that just deflect any question that comes to them, so you really can't improve. Some like Brazilians, we have that. We're a strong personality, so we're very set in our ways. So it's very hard to change. It's like the American saying, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, kind of a thing, right? And since there was so many accomplishments there, so many, even from the 4 that were there, myself, Taco, and through the rotating players, it's hard to change some habits. And I think that's the biggest thing that throughout all the lineups was everyone had their points where they were so fixed that they wouldn't kind of see it through the other person's eyes or help something go in that sense. And at least in my coaching style, I believe that chemistry is 90% of the battle. You just have to be on the same page and understand yourselves, know how to evolve. I don't care if it's the right or the wrong call, as long as you do it together, that kind of a thing. But if people are clashing even before practices in that sense, or having different ideas, how they want to approach the game, how they think, then it just makes it that much harder. And I think that's why we kept in that rotating chair, and that's why CodeZero got fed up and left as well. That's like everyone just, some people reach their limits, right? It just took time for each one to reach theirs.
What about, there was obviously criticism towards like the older players of the roster, or like the big core of the team, that they didn't really know how to introduce these new players into the team, that they didn't really know how to work with them. How do you think? So what do you think was the balance really between, not finding the right fits and, the players not being able to change, the old players, the core not being able to change in order to like accommodate these new players?
There's definitely a little bit of that for sure. I'm not gonna lie. There's like I said, there's that hard headedness. Like, we got to be the best team in the world in one way, so it's hard to release like some of those habits. Even though CS is constantly evolving, we do have to learn of everything, how the meta is changing, how the different teams are approaching. We do have a set style that, at least in the Brazilian way, in LG, SK, MIBR core, we like to play CS. That's how we want to approach. That's our school. As for new players, it was hard because for the first time in history, we were never able to get our first options. Like, at least when I was there, like MIBR, you're the biggest brand. You're supposed to like be the team that everyone looks up to. So if we want Furia players, we're supposed to be able to get them in our minds, right? Not saying it's how it works. And the fact that we couldn't get them, it does make it harder, because if you want, like, look at Astralis when they were like, they could pick whoever they wanted from the Danish scene to incorporate into their roster to build that perfect synergy team that they look out for, right? In our terms, once we couldn't get it, sometimes the gap was very like, okay, we're gonna get a player who's mechanically talented here, but he doesn't have the personal, so we have to give up a very strong area that we believe in, because in the compromise of not getting the player that we wanted. Or the other one, no, this guy is perfect to live with, he's fun, he's gonna hype us up, but his game mechanics isn't good enough, or his understanding of the game isn't good enough. So I'm not gonna lie as well, that puts you already at a starting point of like, you're not 100% fully invested. Even the guys know that, like, okay, I have something to prove already within this team, because I wasn't the first one they wanted, so it's not like they believe in me 100%. And in a team, again, it just becomes really hard to work if you don't believe you have the trust of your teammates, or if you don't see eye to eye on a bunch of things, or in the worst case, if you're just not talented enough in certain areas of the match that we expect you to be. And in a team like MIBR, it's rough to say this, but the amount of pressure there, they don't have time to keep teaching someone 6 months to a year. Like, if you look in hindsight, you should have had that, right? But that's thinking in a long term. Players never think long term. They want to win now, and decisions are always made like that.
So do you think with Kjaerbye, especially as a replacement for CodeZero, which I think made a lot of sense at the time as a potential replacement, do you feel like with Kjaerbye it would have worked out?
So I think I think Kjaerbye would have been an addition, but I don't want to go into the full roster moves. But it was not Kjaerbye and Yuri were not supposed to be there in place of Cold ever.
Okay, interesting.
Well, we were misled then by the rumors, right? It's always curious to know. Like, there's stuff that gets leaked, right? And we all know it because people talk and stuff, and they're in the Steam messages and all that. And a little bit of info gets out, and maybe it's the wrong info, or whatever, and it completely changes like the scope of how things were gonna work. But in your transition from when you were originally there with the Brazilians, and then you went over to Liquid, was it a different coaching style that you got to implement there? Did you have more of a say, more control?
In the beginning, I'm not gonna say it was different because with LG and SK, we grew up together. Like, we came up together, right? From nothing to never winning a BO3 to becoming the best team in the world, winning 2 majors, everything like that. So we all, at least my first stint there, everyone was on the same footing. Everyone's equal in every sense. Everyone's respected. When I went to Liquid, it changed in the sense that I was more respected than ever because Liquid was an unproven team at the time, number 29 in the world, I think, when I joined them. And just, okay, you have a two-time major winning coach. Let's listen to what he has to say. So there was a lot of like, what I say is the law, even though I'm never that general kind of a coach where it's like, I say this and you do it. They just they wanted to take all the information and all the experience in that we had shared. So it was different in that sense. I think afterwards it does change. Like, once people start winning, I think, Chad, you probably know this better. Once people have a taste of winning, their mentality is so easy to changing that power hungry sense and everything like that. And I don't know how Liquid is nowadays, but at least in that first transition to Liquid, it was super easy. Just, I was super well respected, well received, and I grew within the team and the organization really fast over there. Like,
so what about coming back to MIBR then from Liquid? Was it because you guys have clearly had the discussion with Fallen and Co before you knew that you were going there, right? You knew you were leaving Liquid to go back. Was there a talk? It's just going to be like the old days, we'll relive the glory, or you come in and you have like a different control over the team, or was it still Fallen's team and you were like the 2 IC?
No, definitely in the beginning, I had a lot of more power in MIBR, especially in that first iteration of it. I had a lot more power than I think even the LGSK days. Because like, oh, you are coming from Liquid, you and Taco, so they were listening to. It's not just me, Taco as well. They were listening to everything we had to say, and in a very open-minded way, where it's like, even if I don't believe this, I'm just gonna follow it because let's give it a shot, right? And unfortunately, other things go their way, and then that power does shift, that balance does come down after a while. But in the beginning, we did have that a lot, so I can't fault them in anything. If anything, it's my fault that I didn't make the best use of that, I guess, at the time. Okay. I tried to take it a bit down the friendship road when maybe I could have done a little more the general type.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that a lot of like everybody in every part of our entire industry is learning as we go, right? Like, you look back on these experiences that you've had, or these decisions that you've made, or how you've handled it. Like, I look back and I look at my playing career and I go, we just got thrown from being a semi-professional team who'd fly out using our own sponsorship money to go to these events into being a professional team living in Las Vegas, trying to qualify for all these tournaments with no idea about like structure for practice, or in terms of how we were going to best use our time or whatever. And it's me and Gomez, the 2 guys who now have like 5 other people who we now have to manage and look after. And it's like, I'm not fucking equipped for this. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that you've done now in your career as a coach where you've had to just fucking make it up on the fly, right? So I guess we can start living in present day, because you've had a lot of learning that you've been able to do through over your career. Coming into EG and seeing this team and having this opportunity, what was the relationship like there to kick it off? Is it Zeus's team, and you've obviously got Valens there, right? Or is this more of it's Stan's team and you're there with him? It's a partnership.
So my initial contact was with Stan, like, not initial contact, but the most participation I had in the beginning was with Peter, but that was pre-joining the lineup, right? As soon as I joined, I don't know what it is about this EG team, but they just remind me of how we were in LG in the beginning. They have a really tight unit. Like, they're friends above everything, and they're still in that stage where I don't feel they've been contaminated with the power and the fame and all that, and in that sense. So decisions just, yes, like, they do listen to me, but it's because they know I'm good at what I'm doing. What I'm saying is the right. Like, we're using logic, so there isn't any crazy arguments being tossed against it. Like, everything is being done in logic and really reasonable discussion, trying to actually, okay, it's not about anyone's fault. It's about finding the solution. It doesn't matter if I said something wrong right here. You understand that my point was getting better, so let's find this solution together. Like, even no one gets butthurt over anything. No one gets offended. No, like everyone takes it really well. And the way that they interact amongst themselves in every situation, I'm not talking only in game. Like when another team comes and tries to poach it, the openness that's inside is like, no, this is happening, everything like that. Oh, salaries are something like this. Discussing in turn, everything is being put out in the open in our team right now. And the way that it's done, it leaves zero room for error. So even if someone's going to make a decision, you understand where they're coming from, even if you don't agree with it. So you can't be mad at it. So things are just so easy to fix. And yes, like I said, so transition to me, I have that power, but I don't need to use that power. Like it's natural. It's work. And there's times when I look at Peter, I'm like, no, Peter, no, it's not time to do this. Trust me. Like, go follow. And there's time where he's like, no, zews, you do this. There's times where the player's like, no, I think that what you're saying is wrong. We could have maybe done this. So it's a well-oiled machine right now. It's working.
All right. So it's all about the collective, right? I think that's how we should all live our lives. Unfortunately, well, I was going to say unfortunately. It could be fortunately if we're all just better at being honest. It's one of those hard things to talk about things that are bothering you and stuff. And I think that those social dynamics in the team are normally what rip them apart, right? Why you see, and I guess now today you don't have the same flexibility as we did a couple of years ago, right? Because these contracts are a lot more rigid. People aren't getting out. They don't want to be put on the bench. They don't want to go without a team. So that's good. Everybody's kind of getting an opportunity to mature, and that EG team is still a pretty young bunch of guys. So now we're kind of caught up-ish. I wanted to kind of ask about what it's been like during COVID for you having to coach from Brazil. Now, the time zone, you're probably loving it. I guess maybe you're finishing late. Is it? How does that work?
Dude, I'm not gonna lie. For my lifestyle, I love it because in theory, I start preparing for practice around 12 or 1, which would be took the time to do this. But I'll finish at 10 or 11 p.m. So I still have time to either go out with a girl, go out to a bar, go out to like see friends, whatever I want. So next day we start late, so I can still wake up, be hungover, be myself. So in terms of working from Brazil, in that sense, it's perfect. I mean, I was really worried in the beginning because I take my job very serious. Like before I moved back to Brazil, now I gave up my entire personal life for this, right? Like me and all those guys, family, girlfriends, everything that we had to try to chase this. So I put everything into it, and I always say I work 24/7. Like I even saw that recent discussions like, oh, esports is 24/7. It is, and I'm like, I think for each their own, but to me, it's always been 24/7, just because it's how much I prioritize it in my life based on just how much it's changed my life and how much I like it. So coming here, I was really worried about how are my conditions going to be. Like, I've never coached remotely in the sense, how am I going to do a demo review remotely with 5 guys, make sure that they're paying attention, everything like that. But again, having EG, my teammates there that actually know, oh, this is time to work. We're going to work and help you work and find some things that we want. And Valence comes up with some softwares that helps us show this thing in real time so that everyone can see the different perspectives, things like that. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but we're adjusting it, I think, among the best out there right now.
Okay. In terms of this striker being during COVID coach and all that, do you have any questions on this one?
Well, I was going to ask about how difficult it is to kind of get accommodated with the team while you really never get to see them, right? Usually, at least even if you're new as in a team, you usually have a tournament like a few weeks down the line. You know, your first debut is going to be on LAN really, really quickly, which obviously wasn't the case this time. You haven't really been able to see your team for, what is it now, 4 months or something since you joined?
Yeah.
So that's quite
months.
a long time for not to see your own team, you know, and stuff like that. So has that been a problem at all, like interpersonally and stuff like that?
I think I'm not going to say it was a problem, but it definitely could have been better because, especially with the way I am in person, I'm even a lot more lively. I like to just like tap people on the back, shake them up, play around, try to get them out of their comfort zone in every sense. But again, with these guys' personalities, they were already a friendly group, so that helps. Like, I'm not coming into chaos, clash of personalities, anything like that. And it's not like I didn't know these guys. Like, I'm not going to say they were my best friends, all of them, but Tarek was in MIBR before, so we hung out a few times. Peter, I worked with in Liquid. Some of these guys, when we were in China, there was jack all to do in China, so we just go out and drink together and have fun and laugh. So we did know these people, right? So it's not, like I said, it could have been better. I wish I could be there with them in a LAN environment just to, one, play the tournaments, because that's the fun part of all of this to me. But more importantly, like, even to just get to actual work, like when you can sit down, everyone in the room for a boot camp for 7 to 10 days and just show this is what we need to do and focus, and you take that exhausting period that makes everything better. It's there's no comparison. I will always be the biggest defender of boot camps on LAN as a team ever.
Well, somebody who did it literally 24/7 for like years at a time, I'm not surprised.
I guess that
Or-
environment that you used to have, right, where it was the team, it was living and breathing Counter-Strike, you would in 2020, do you think that's not possible anymore? Like, obviously we have some of these tier 2, tier 3 teams who try and play as much as they can, but do you think there has to be more balance and tact taken now, or do you still think it's just about putting in the reps and playing?
I think it's on a case by case, but if passion trumps everything, if the kid is that 15-year-old, like 15-year-old me, who not go to school just to play Counter-Strike because I wanted it and stay up till 5 a.m. playing Counter-Strike. If I have that drive in me to play 24/7, go for it, because you'll never have a moment like this. The thing is, I don't think you can sustain that for a very healthy long period, because you'll do that until normally you reach a pro level, and you'll take the first year of that or the second year of that very seriously. But like anything in life, it becomes routine. And it's easy to lose motivations because of arguments you're having or bad results or like in numerous reasons, right? So I think it's unhealthy to think that you can do that for all your life. Like, I don't think Forrest, which is like a legend still playing till today at a high level, does that, because I don't think he'd have the mental senate. Like, he'd just lose his mind if he did it. You learn over time with experience to balance it out. No, I do need my personal time. I do need that. I think you learn when you're older or more in the scene to better invest, be a better worker rather than one that works 24/7. In the 10 hours you're going to work it the correct way. Focus on the tactics. Don't just focus on, like in Brazil, we say everyone wants to be inside the server just to kick the ball around, right? But no one wants to put in the hard work to, which is doing those those demo reviews that just suck balls, dude. But you have to do it. Like, you have to do it if you want to get better. If you have to understand this game. Why did you make that decision wrong? That kind of thing. So afterwards, I think you transition more to that. But hey, if you are all for 24/7, you can still maintain it. Do it, because I did it, and that's how I remember getting good in the first place. That's how you're gonna get ahead of the competition, is being better than everyone, like putting in more work.
I actually think, and this is something which I think I've articulated on broadcast before, but it's a massive change, especially from teams from certain regions around the world, right? And I think the case of your team in the beginning is one of the best, because you look at what you wanted to achieve and what lengths you went to achieve that, and what the drive was. Like, it was an obsession, right? So that's not going to be the case for too many teams these days, because of the work that's been done, especially by teams from the region, right? When you look at that, you've set the groundwork. Fallen's obviously done a fantastic job over there with Gamers Club, right? Am I saying that right?
Gamers Club,
yeah. And setting up a foundation and a base, for these. Whereas you look at similar from the Australian side of things, but I think it was different for us, is we didn't have to upheave our entire life, right, to chase the dream. It was something that we did. It wasn't on the same sense as what you guys did. What you guys did was fucking bonkers. Like, we got lucky. We got to live in a casino and stuff. But I think that those times are, well, I don't know if they're past us, but I think that barrier for entry is much harder now. Now, we're looking at the second half here of 2020. Everything's still fucked, everybody. That's not going to change anytime soon. So don't worry about that. Everything's still going to be fucked. But now you're with EG. You guys had a decent, I would say you would have been happy with your end to last season, or the first half of the year. As we move into the second half, what can you as a team even put down as a plan? Is it just win everything that comes your way? Are you going to try and pace yourself? Like, where do you set the yardsticks now? Because it's not just the major to focus on. Everything's kind of changed around a bit.
Yeah, so exactly that. We don't have the major set. We don't know if that's going to happen. My personal opinion, I don't think it's going to happen, just based on how things are, at least not here in Brazil, right?
Seems unlikely.
So our focus right now, I'm again, with my coaching style, I don't like to be result oriented. I will put okay, we have to be top 4, because if you're making constant semifinals, the odds are you're gonna bite the odd championship here and there.
Mm-hmm.
That should be your goal. Never to win it all, because that puts too much pressure. But I think the goal should be perform better than we were. So what we want to do for this second season is look at how we finished it. We want to first catch back up to the level, because 1 month break, it does clip that, like nip it a little bit. But once we reach that level, again, it's keep improving, because unfortunately for us right now, I don't think we're leaving NA anytime soon, so we're not going to be facing that many other teams. So it does come a little bit to dominate the area, but that doesn't translate win it all, right? Because we just have to maintain ourselves maintain ourselves as the best NA team, which we are at the moment, at least how we close out the season. Keep evolving from that, so that when we do get the chances to show on LAN, we still have this level, because it's very easy to peek out, oh, we're dominating NA, okay, take your foot off the gas right now, everything like that. no, we have to keep improving. It's not about the results. I don't care if we win every single one. We still have to get better. So when we get to those lands, we get. If we keep making mistakes, if we keep fucking up, and we just think it's the most normal thing in the world that it happens, that's not going to lead us into a good place. And I don't care if we're winning and making those mistakes. I'd rather lose and not make those mistakes, because that's consistency to me. That's what matters.
Okay, Striker, on the EG in 2020. Do you have any questions on this?
Well, I'm just not sure if you want to lead it into like the changes in coaching that happened, because
we may as well go for it.
Because I was going to start with that, just because Zeus mentioned something that was of interest to me. Obviously, Valence being a part of the data analysis. Can't say it.
Data analyst.
Yeah, there you go. That team. So we had last episode, we had like a kind of like a show of certain tools in the game that are publicly available, and that's obviously become a big thing in the past couple of years, especially. And he seems to be, from what you were saying, somebody who even creates some of these tools privately for you guys. So can you speak to like what he does and maybe some examples if possible?
Sure. So he'll come up to me and be like, Zeus, what do you want to work on? And I'm like, okay. So there's a lot we need to work on that I'd like from the tools. Ideally, I want a tool that just feeds me the information, and that's that. But to that, we have to set up a lot of parameters to filter and anything like that, right? So it's hard to brainstorm that. So while we go throughout time, we're writing down examples of things that we want to ultimately get there. That's a long-term tool. When we want something short-term, our communication sucks. Hey, Valence, do you think you can get me something that translates speech to text so that I can see which players are communicating more, which is less, something like that? So oh yeah, I think we could come up with something like that. So that's an example of something that we use, and I think we're ahead of the game in that sense. We're already past that. We fix our communication problems better. Like, we're still going to use it to maintain it, but it's something like that. So I think in a general sense it's that. Okay, Valence, do you have something that can help us record these players' POV so that when we do the demo review, it works better? Oh, there's already something out like that. I'm just going to show you the link. Does this work? Yeah, but could you increase the frame rate? Yeah, I'll just tweak the software a little bit, things like that.
Okay. So that was something that we dived into quite heavily on the last episode. We looked at Shadow.G for like the 2Ds. There's a bunch of other programs out there doing similar things. We looked at Refrag, which with the obviously quicker demo
server,
playing, and obviously you can play against executes, or you can look at the team's executes and have all the grenade databases and that kind of stuff. And then the other one we looked at was Skybox, and I was kind of prefacing that one more on a broadcast one. But do you think that there's anything, at least in your mind, that would make coaching 10 times easier, or are there any tools that I guess you're getting them made, so you probably have already thought of them. You probably don't have to dream too much if you got someone making it for you there. But let's steer this back to obviously when you started coaching to now. What have been the biggest changes? Because on the desk, right, we sit here and we talk about coaches, and the only thing that we can really use to back it up is if you're a very vocal coach, right? We can go, oh yeah, he looks like, he's good for the team, he's bringing up the morale or whatever. Or if you have a background of something, like for example, adreN, I felt that when I used to play against him, they had a lot of good strats in Liquid, so I thought he might be a good strategic coach, right? So where was I going with this? I feel like I had a point.
What was the difference between coaching back then and now?
Yeah. How's it grown? Fucking hell, I went too far on a tangent, mate.
So, like you said, at least for coaching, I feel like, at least in CSGO, I am one of the OGs, because I did catch the very beginning of coaching, which was, to me, insanely overpowered, where we could talk 24/7, whatever happened, a grenade goes off in the stadium, boom, hey guys, I think there's guys there. It's like that kind of a shit. Like, who wouldn't do that? So it was way overpowered in the beginning. I could see 5 screens. I could communicate. Like, it was just too much.
All right.
Then Valve did the 180 and completely clipped my nuts, and I couldn't do anything anymore. Where you can't talk, you can't do anything. That's how I felt. But I got the timing of that when I was going to play for Immortal, so I didn't catch the very beginning. And they fixed it a little bit after a while to basically, when I started coaching Liquid, they already allowed freeze time already. It was nothing. Like in the very beginning, I think it was just nothing. They wanted to completely cut out coaches. Back then, we didn't have tools. We didn't have any analytical tools. Like, the best I had in the beginning, I think, was, what was the name of that? It was basically a Shadow.G, but way earlier. Stats Helix, that's the one. I got that from someone in Katowice. He's like, offered me a beta key, and I'm like, oh, let's try it out. And I think that was the best thing that I used for a while. After a while, we learned, at least in the stats department, then we got actual programs with better stats that show us everything. We had a program called Rewind, which basically is a functioning demo player. Yeah, it's not as pretty, but there's no lag between like the ticks and everything like that. So it just optimized my time, and that's what I started wanting to do. I wanted to optimize my time rather than trying to find something that made it better. For my coaching in the beginning with LG, I was a lot of hype man, and I came up with strategies and different kinds of things. That was my thing. I had fallen there, so once or twice a match at most. I remember I could talk 24/7. So once or twice a match, I'd be like, "No, guys, let's do a Hall's contact while we fake here," or something like that, where I'd actually give direction. More than that, I just my job was try to be in the server pre-game and fix the things that we were having wrong and find new things and try to keep us ahead of the meta. It was super easy back then to be ahead of the meta because people weren't, I don't know what the fuck was going on, that people just weren't that creative, no joke. Like nowadays, it's so hard. Everyone's done so much, right? So in the beginning, it was that. Then when I went to Liquid, they needed a little bit something different. Liquid needed that guy at first. They were needing an in-game leader at the time, right? They had one, but they weren't very confident in Hiko, like everything that was going on. They were crazy, so I had to take up an in-game leader role, even though I couldn't communicate. But we were only having online matches, so you pass it through. Then I tried to combine that creating strategy part with actually in-game leading. So I was in-game leader with a player, which wasn't a problem. And from a coaching perspective, to me, it's a lot easier just because I'm not having to worry about where I'm looking, what I'm everything. It's more about coordination. Keep evolving that. Players learn on their own. You don't need to give as much input. Now it's about calling the key timeouts that you need, and calling the correct strategy, or saying the right thing, or identifying whatever flaw it is that's going on. Evolve it further to MIBR, to now. Basically, getting into now, we, at least I'll talk about mine. I think everyone else's coach career probably similar, to a point where right now we have to understand the grand scope of everything that a strategy works, where everyone's supposed to be in every role. We have to call out. We have to be that leader for the kids, in a way where it's like setting the right path of where they're supposed to go. We have to hype them up. We have to reprehend them when they need to. We have to call the correct strategies. And I think that even the people in Blast were surprised, because like you said, it is a guesstimate for all coaches. The guesstimate with me tends to be that I'm the hype man and everything like that, which I love, because I do love doing that and it's fun. But I think it was even Maniac, because like he's surprised at how much I talk in the server now. It's just, one, we're on the line, we can talk, and I feel that, hey, if we can talk right now as coaches and they're allowing us to give these inputs, go for it, make the best of it, give the calls. If I notice something's wrong, I'm calling it off. And like I said, found a really good balance with Peter, where I think it's like an 80-20 kind of thing, where at least right now I actually do have still to in-game lead a few of the rounds when something goes wrong, or if I have a really strong read on something, I can comment and they'll just follow. But it was definitely an evolution to get through all this, and it was a learning process through playing, through getting screwed a lot of times, seeing what went wrong, and that tends to be how life works, right? I think once you get kicked up the ass a few times, you learn to do it right.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like you've taken a lot of things that in-game leaders back in the day, before we even had coaches of thought, used to do, right? And you've taken a lot of the roles and responsibilities there. Obviously, well, I don't know if obviously, do you feel like coaching has directly impacted having in-game leaders being more frag heavy? Because it's starting to trend in that way, right? We're not having too many in-game leaders that are just anchors anymore. Do you think that's a facility of the coach, or do you think that's just we're having general players are smarter?
I think definitely both. I think every generation that comes is going to have more information easily available to them. So they already come at a base level prepared to what we had to fight and learn for, right? Like if you look at the very back old days, it took us 10, maybe 2 days to get a demo on HLTV, because like 256 slots to get, this is 1.6, right? And it keeps evolving. So nowadays the players come more prepared. The coaches help a lot. It's not only coaches. Like if you look at Big, I think they have like, I don't know how many people they have analyzing that team at this point. They have got B, who's a manager who does that. They have the coach who does it. They have a second coach. They have an analyst. They have a second analyst. Like it's insane. And all of these do really, because the less time the in-game leader has to spend fully investing his time on that, and can practice a little bit more individually on his sons, and can worry a little bit more how to play his position instead of worrying of how do I coordinate this bunch of idiots around me, which is what general in-game leaders used to think. Like I have to do everything, and that was even like Sean Garrett's kind of days. Like he had to literally think for everyone else almost at some point. So it's impossible to keep your game to a high level when you're having to do that kind of micromanagement. And I think CS has evolved to that, where it's no longer micro and it's macro. You give an idea, and people are supposed to know how to do that idea. It's not going to be you do this flash here, you do to the right, then you take 3 steps back, do everything like that. That's how it used to be before. Today is like the idea, okay, you're going to make flash noises out mid and pretend that we're actually taking this, put pressure there, but our strength is going to be somewhere else. Then the guy already knows which ways he has available to him, which resources, how's the best way to do it, and he kind of fills in the gap without the in-game leader needing to be that guy who just does everything.
Yeah. Go for a strike. I
think I definitely agree with the fact that the lack of so much micromanagement is I think the biggest factor in all this for sure. Just because the game has gotten so much more technical, and as Zeus said, like people know what to do in specific scenarios now. They have it all like practiced way ahead of time, so they just know what every situation means quite exactly. So yeah, the in-game leader doesn't really have to do as much micromanagement, at least in most top teams these days. That they can focus a bit more on fragging and don't really have to think about everything.
I think it got to a point where it's not even they don't have to. They can't. Like, look at something simple as ladder take on train for a team. There has got to be at least 12 variations of how a guy can take ladder. It's just like the guy who's looking upward, he's like, which one's coming? He made some noise. I think he's going to break a window. He might flash. Okay, he didn't flash. Okay, is there Molly below? Are they going to do a tot, like a stack drop? Or not? Oh, I heard an HE. Is he gonna push me? Like, you have to be aware of so many. If the in-game leader tries to know what's going on your screen, there's no way in hell he's gonna know. Like, every position is so complex now, which is why if you have some specializations, right? The B player is insane at the B position because there's so many ways to get attacked and to hold that position that he literally has to. He lives in his own bubble world there, and the in-game leader should be okay. Whoever's coming to your side has to adapt to you, not me. You're the one who knows what's going on there. If I try to command you and you're in charge of your side, there's a high likelihood I'm gonna mess you up. So it's gonna be me knowing what you want to do, the general idea of how you like to do it, and when I come, that way I can help and support you in a very good way. I think that's how teams tend to be looking at least from my previous 3 experiences in Liquid and MIBR, EG. All of them have this outlook at least.
All right, sweet. So what I think we might do, because that's great, because I've been writing down some notes. Next year, Zeus, I want to try and transition to coaching because I'm fed up of standing on camera and talking bullshit. I want to actually try and
it seems to be a thing. Everyone's leaving, man.
Yeah, I want to do some hard work, mate. So what we'll do is we're going to get into the recent news and we'll get to talk about everybody's favorite bald man from America at some point. So Lucas, roll the bumper. All right, so we're back and we're getting into the recent news, and there is a lot of recent news to jump into, guys. So we're going to have a lot of fun things to talk about here. The mouz one and the CSPPA ranking. Now, they're my 2 favorite topics, but we're going to start with the Astralis news. Now, Striker, you want to wrap this one up for everybody? What's kind of happened since the last show in the Astralis camp?
Well, we just got confirmed what we kind of thought at the time already, which is that Bobsky and Desitaga are going to play and Glaive and Zipix are going to stay in activity for some time more. I guess we're still not sure when they're actually going to come back, but for the time being, for Cologne, which means at least until the end of August, it's going to be the 2 new guys coming in instead of Glaive and Zipix.
So we got Bubsky and Esatag who will be playing officially for them in the Cologne event, and Megasboy will be doing the in-game leading. Yep. I keep calling him boy. I don't know why. I guess it's just going to stick with me forever. So I know that he's not a fan of that. We'll try and stop that. We'll see if we can curb that when we get on broadcast in a couple of days. But okay, so there's a lot of moving parts here. I have Zipax on Steam Friends, so I could see like when he was starting to play more CS, and I was like, oh, all right, maybe we're looking at the comeback for Cologne right here. But
they were choosing it themselves, and then they just like shut the door at all their fans. That was the stupidest shit I saw in the last like few weeks from players. They're like, like the eye emoji and just like showing people that they're back to practicing or back to like individual training or something, and then the news comes in that they're actually not playing Cologne. I think that was a bad call, man.
Well, everybody loves a good cock tease every now and again, so the best team in the world, I suppose they don't mind doing it themselves. But just looking at the roster they're going to go into, because it's from the player break, so everybody's obviously had time off, right? And they're going in with a roster that we've never seen play together before. I look at this and I go, are they experimenting at ESL One Cologne? I know it's online, but are they experimenting with an event this size? What do you reckon, Zeus?
I have no fucking idea.
It's a mess.
Dude, like, okay, their announcements, Yugi was there and then he's not anymore, the 10 roster, and then switching around. The only thing I know is I don't think that they have a clear path in mind in terms of the roster they want. I think they are experimenting, and it's not because it's Cologne. I think that for them to be doing this, they have to like be put in that position where it's like, okay, this is what we have. Let's make the best of it. Let's use this roster, see what works, what doesn't, and everything like that. Because I think that at least in the players, or like I said, players who have been on these kind of rosters, they know that the chemistry is so big, and it's as it was like Magis before, right? Before Magis, they weren't the same thing. Yeah, they were really good, but it took that one piece to change, and now it's 2 pieces off from that. So of course they feel it, and it wasn't like they broke up. So I think that things have to be a little bit of a mess there. That's just my. I don't have as much. I don't even have them on Steam Friends like you guys have, so I don't know what their practice is doing, what they're going. But just from an outside perspective, it has to be a little bit of a mess. They can't fully argue that they are in full control of this, and this was all planned out, because it just makes 0 sense.
Striker, what do you reckon? Because it is pretty perplexing, right? Like, if the other guys are back and we've just come out of a player break, is it just because they've announced this roster and they want to show people that they're going to use the players? Because when we did the Device interview, it was like if the players are available, they want to have the best team, right? That's the gist I got from when we had Device on.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Not entirely sure what the plan was in the first place. So I think from what Device was saying, it was pretty obvious that at least with Zipex, they didn't really know what was going to happen. With Glaive, we thought he was going to come back after those 3 months, which would have been, I'm pretty sure it would have been for Cologne.
Yep.
Or at least like the event after that. But with Zipex, it was obviously not really set in stone. And it actually really wasn't even with Glaive. They were kind of saying that they didn't want to put pressure on the players by, expecting them to come back by this point. Obviously, that just puts like an additional strain on you when you're on your break and trying to recover. So yeah, I think they're just like going along as they get news from Glaive and Zipex, and depending on how they're feeling, how much they're actually prepared, because they haven't played for quite a long time now. Yeah. So that also plays into that decision. If they haven't played individually for 3 months and only started like last week or whenever they were teasing that, then I can imagine that Astralis just don't want to put them right into it like official matches and just like give them another month to get up to speed and form, and then put them back into the roster for the event after that.
Yeah, it's going to be strange, and I think because we know that we're about to go on another marathon of Counter-Strike, right? We already have the DreamHack event going on right now. We know. We don't think we can publicly say a lot of these events haven't had dates officially announced and stuff yet, but it's basically going to be event after event after event after event.
Well, we know until October at least.
At least, and then after then, you would assume, right, looking at the calendar and where the major is placed, 1 or 2 things going to happen there. Maybe like Blast will run their dates then, because they haven't announced their second season. I'm not actually quite certain. I haven't had an updated calendar.
It is like the calendar is there. I'm not sure if it's been changed or anything like that. It's just like I think it's the original dates that are still like public.
All right. Well, I assume there's going to be some moving going on there with that. And then the other one is the sense of now with the third RMR event. Well, if we know that we're going to basically be going all the way up to end of October with that, it doesn't leave a lot of time if there is a major to happen. And then I look at this and I question, okay, well, we could tell that some teams were getting burnt out. Like planning your peak when you're basically playing Counter-Strike for 2 or 3 months straight, which is what some of these teams are going to be doing. That's very difficult. And that's why, like earlier when I was asking you, Zeus, about like if you guys had like goals, or now it's going to be just about keeping your focus, right? It's just about discipline now. And maybe Astralis having this roster where they can swap and change people in, it's going to make them harder to counter-strat, right? It's also going to make it harder for them to pull shit together. But if they still have the natural chemistry, which they have to have after winning all those majors together, and then they can maybe just slot in an ESL tag here, or put a Bubsky in here, and just they can keep mixing it up in that way. It's going to be really hard to manage. I'm living in like a fantasy world assuming this thing could work, but I would love to see if it does work, especially considering the current climate, because it would make things a little bit more interesting for me to talk about, if I'm going to be honest, chopping and changing of that roster.
And I mean, I'm kind of excited to actually see this roster play, as opposed to like with Yugi, who just didn't make sense from any standpoint.
Yeah, this can work.
So yeah, exactly. Bubsky is actually a really strong fragger. Potentially, ESL is like a supportive player that can like replace like some of Glaive's positions, play a second op if necessary. That's like, I feel like this team actually makes sense as opposed to the previous version where we saw ESL and Yugi probably playing instead of those two, which just would have been a whole bunch of clashes, especially between Device and Yugi, obviously. And so this team is actually one that I'm excited to see if they could match anywhere close to like the old Astralis that we saw. If it's possible to go without the clutch minister, without the game leader that we kind of perceive as like one of the best in-game leaders in the world. So I'm just curious. I'm actually like really excited to see this team play, even if it's not the main Astralis.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see it, but I'm going to take the opposite road for you. I'm going to be the pessimist in it because I just believe that, like I said, one, not just the chemistry then. Like, look at how they approach Banana and Inferno. How are they going to do it? They think that they're just going to bring in a full new style that everyone has every little timing down that their teammate has, everything like that. There's so much repetition that goes into, like, I'm just gonna say it. Our Inferno is insane, right? Our results were proving that we were on a really big winning streak, and a big part of that was our Banana. And those two players there, they know how to do it. They have all their timing. They have all these rotations. They have all these set plays and set little things. If I think that I'm gonna slot someone in there, even if they know the idea behind it, that they're gonna have that same exact chemistry with, okay, because we've been through this situation now. You have, when we see this flash, we instantly fall back, something like that. It's just through the repetition. If you try to switch, yeah, maybe the anti-strat angle a little bit, but I've never believed that anti-strat is as big as people believe it is in this level. I think it's more about teams that actually know what they're doing. The anti-strat kind of comes naturally. You anti-strat something that's very different that the other team does. Some anomaly, like, oh, they have this different smoke play, they have this different strat where no one's seen it before or something like that. But other than that, we've pretty much seen it all. So it's about knowing how to react correctly to those situations. And I find it hard to slot players in and out where you're going to have this, like, remember, we're talking about the 1% playing against the 1%, right? It's the best of the best playing the best. So it's hard to, if you lose 10% in efficiency there because you don't have that much level of chemistry with the other guy, the other team probably has that 10% and you're not going to come out on top. That's why I'm going to be the pessimist in this.
The one that I'm most worried in, like, sure, not having Zipex there to win the clutches that he did win, you never can bank on those, but something that I felt you could almost always bank on was if there was a massive hemorrhage somewhere on the map or something had to be done, that's when Glaive would make one of the plays that Glaive would make, right? He'd do something hyper aggressive and get a multi-kill and shut down a play that's been working. I don't know who I would look to in the team to now fill that void. I guess it will have to be Magisk, like, and I would say that maybe Esatag and Bubsky in the beginning might not feel super comfortable going for too many risks outside the box. I don't know what the culture with that kind of stuff is like necessarily, but I think Magisk would be the one, considering his play style or the fact he's going to be doing the in-game leading. I'm a little bit worried to see how that pans on out because if he gets in his head about that, they could have big negative effects right there. But look, we're going to talk about them a little bit more when we do the Cologne preview. So we'll hold on to a little bit of the Astralis chat, especially with the roster they put forward till then. Now we're going to talk about VP. This kind of went exactly as we thought it would, right, Striker?
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. That's what we kind of expected when adreN was announced as leaving. It was just curious. It was just weird that at the time, Virtus.pro were still kind of were still showing Buster as like benched or whatever it was, the exact wording. And like a week later, they actually came in and said that Buster is coming back into the active lineup, which is the most sensible thing to do. And what we kind of expected when he even went on a break. It wasn't like a benching because of performance issues or anything. He actually wanted to go on a break. So it makes sense that he just returned back to the lineup.
Yeah, so just for those people who aren't too familiar with what's happened, adreN was on the roster. He's now been removed from the team, and the team now is James, Kicker, and Buster. That was the trio that you're all probably familiar with. Sanji's obviously been there for some time now. He's been able to stay, which is great. Hopefully he doesn't have to be a dumpster for guns anymore. And Yakinda is one that we've been getting excited about. Now, Zeus, I don't know how you feel about this Virtus.pro roster. Do you think like their major run a flash in the pan and they're not too threatening, or do you think they've actually had some big hurdles they've had to overcome as a team to get back on track?
To me, they're a very curious case because I don't think it was just one-off run. Because when we watched them, and especially like we were trying to study them, they had a lot of different takes and ideas of how they approach the maps. Like we used to joke James time, but like the way he would open up Dust 2, the team set him up. It reminded me very much of a Na'Vi 2015-esque where they did with Guardians. Like they put one flash to get him in position, then he knows which angles are favorable to him, every single one, and he clears those. And if the guy's there, he kills them. And then he goes next one, flash, everything. Like they set him up perfectly, so they knew what how they wanted to approach the game and how they wanted to do it. I think that once teams caught on to them, and because if we studied them, I know EG studied them because when I joined EG, they were like, oh, let's do a Vanguard, right? That kind of crap. So I was like, okay, other teams got it. I don't think that they push themselves to that level again because everyone says like that cliche. It's easy to reach the top in a sense. It's hard to maintain. It's about that because when you get there, you're scrutinized. Then it's not about anti-strategy. It's just everyone knows what you're doing and they understand your thought process behind it. So you already have to be one step ahead. And I feel they haven't done that. In terms of player quality, I think that trio especially is insane. talent-wise. I think they are super good, and I'm curious about them just because I want to see them do well. No joke. One, for the region they come from. I always like to see those stories. And two, because I actually do think that they're good. I don't know what happened that they didn't keep up to what they were doing, because they obviously had a drop-off from that area. But I don't know. I still think that they can do it. They're one of those teams I still do believe that can reach at least, let's say, a top 8 kind of a thing, like consistently.
Yeah, that kind of can transition me nicely here. Striker, in terms of now that they've upgraded their firepower, like this is quite substantial now, right? Because before we had spoken about Sanji and adreN both not really contributing. And now that it might only just be Sanji, who can even have moments of his own when he isn't having to drop guns, where would you kind of place the potential of this team? Do you think they have an opportunity now to, I guess, be second in the CIS region behind Na'Vi?
I'm just trying to remember which teams are there, but obviously like
Spirit
lower.
and FaZe.
Yeah, that's what I was. That's where I was going. I'm just making sure I didn't forget anybody.
Well, FaZe is currently 28th and VP is 25.
FaZe is a bit in trouble just because they've just had a really bad run of form. So I feel like the second spot is kind of up for the taking at this point. Virtus.pro obviously kind of like in the discussion for that, along with like what you were saying, Spirit and Gambit youngsters as well.
Yep.
So those 4 teams obviously like. Those will be the ones who will compete for that second spot, but there's obviously a big gap to Na'Vi. I'm not sure this is going to be well, that depends. It's just so difficult for me to identify why they had the problems in the first place. I don't think it's about them setting
changes up all the time.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's about setting up Jame too much or anything. I'm not on that train that thinks that Jame is the biggest. Jame is the problem with that team.
Yeah.
Maybe they could like explore that and maybe give Kicker, or well, in this case, I guess Yekinder, just because he's probably the second star of that team at this point. Maybe they could give them more space, but I feel like, considering how many teams play around their op and how effective that tends to be, I think Jame is the person that you want to set up your game around. So I'm just not entirely sure what their problems were in the first place outside of firepower. So that makes me think that they, just by adding another player who's actually better at fragging than adreN has been in the past couple of months, they are going to improve.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they've found their identity, right? But I think here, now that they should at least have more consistency from that firepower role, maybe things will start looking up. But this one here, I didn't want to believe it was true, and not for a bad reason, just because in my head, it doesn't make sense. And this is Kjaerbye to FaZe. Now, I've read tweets on the contrary from other people who, players, or, like Olaf made a tweet, I think, and I saw someone else make a tweet saying, this makes sense role-wise. Why am I thinking it doesn't make sense role-wise, Striker?
I honestly kind of see where Olaf is coming from, and I was thinking the same at the time, actually, kind of, just because Nico is obviously the more of a like an entry lurker type of a player, but he hasn't really done that with Olaf. Olaf was kind of the lurker in this team, and Nico had to kind of reinvent and be more of like part of the main attack trio or whatever. And this, I think, where this is going to lead is that Nico is just going to go on the sidelines again, and Kjaerbye is going to be like the entry. That's where I think what Olaf meant, at least.
Yeah,
and I feel like it makes sense, but the problem is with the in-game leader being on the sidelines and stuff like that. That's always become kind of an issue, and you had to have like a secondary in-game leader who was like part of the pack. So it's just, I feel like role-wise it makes sense, but it's just going to put Nico in a weird position again, I think.
Yeah, because who takes that? Because you would assume if you're going to have like 2 people playing the extremities, it's going to be Cold probably, and Nico, if we're saying this here is right. And then Rain has basically been the entry fragger on their T sides, at least when they're going for their set pieces or their map control. He's normally that first one in Mirage on Connector, for example. And then Brokey has to be there with the AWP for map control. So then you're going to throw Kjaerbye in with Rain. Then who's going to take the elder statesman role? Is it going to be Rain? Is he the one who's going to be like calling that and having to communicate that to Nico? Actually, Zeus, this is perfect for you because Stan operates in playing on the extremities on the T side on certain maps, going for the late ladder flanks on Nuke and that kind of shit. Do you find a drop off when he's not playing with the pack?
A little bit, but it's not really a drop off. Like in terms of Stan, normally when you see him doing those kind of plays, it's not out in the open. It was already something set up that he's like, if this happens, we already know he's coming. So because when you're having that kind of a flank happen, either too fast or too slow, the other side of the map has to react accordingly. Because if we kill ourselves when he's in a slow flank, it doesn't happen. So we're kind of set up. I think that with FaZe, just from knowing these players, if I'm going to take a guess, I'm going to take a different guess. I'm going to say that Cold is going to be the one that's going to probably change his roles. Cold,
Okay.
from knowing him, he's that kind of guy. One, he can do every job because he is just that good, and he's that kind of guy who's like, no, for this to work, let's try this like this. So I'm not going to say it's going to stick it, but I think at least in the beginning, it's going to be Cold taking probably a more active position, not being so much on the sidelines, probably being more with the pack, and he's going to leave Kjaerbye to do his thing a little bit.
Okay,
my guess.
I mean, I could see it. I could see it happen. Yeah.
Well, what if Kjaerbye wants to go for a bit of a reinvention, though, right? Like, if Kjaerbye wants to come in and play, because you think about it, right? Even though he's still a young guy, what are we going back to? 2017, he was a major MVP. So he kind of peaked real early, kind of fucked himself there a little bit, didn't he? But now maybe if he wants to try a different role or try coming at this from a different angle, it's not necessarily a bad time to do so. And everybody else in the team, you would say, is relatively established. I liked seeing what I was seeing from FaZe. I think towards the tail end, everybody cottoned on to a lot of their set pieces. You could see there were certain timings that were being explored. They were being spammed through boxes while lining up smokes. Like, people caught up, right? People worked out what they were doing. But I thought that having to throw Bymas into that situation, they were still able to retool and make it semi-respectable. So I don't know, like, having Kjaerbye come in and play some of those roles. Where was Bymas playing on Nuke? He was like the solo ramp player. For Kjaerbye to play that spot, that's not terrible. Like, I don't know. Maybe I should ask Yanko. I haven't spoken to him in a while.
I mean, for Molof's take, it seems like it's going to be a one-to-one replacement just for the spots, right? At least the way he worded it. I don't know. It's going to be great. What I'm more curious, I think, for it to work out of all of that is how long has Kjaerbye been away from like the scenes now? Like, what? How many months was that?
Like 3 months, I think.
Yeah.
Or like 2 months.
3 months. He probably had to reevaluate a lot of things. So I think it's going to be on his mentality. If he shows up with that mentality that you're going to say, I want to join here and try new things, everything like that, then even though I don't think it's a one-to-one fit as much as Olaf was saying, I think it can work out. But if he go, because I don't know, maybe this is just prejudice. Like, this is the way I built up the story. But the fact that Kjaerbye left Astralis in that area to join North doesn't show me that he's much of a team player in that sense, right? So if he still has that mentality in a way, I don't see it working out. If he's changed that, I think it's going to be the biggest point.
I'm trying to remember. There was like a period where Kjaerbye was switching around in North, but I'm just like trying to work out like where he switched from and where to, because I know when he was in Astralis, obviously there was the famous clash between Kjaerbye and dupreeh, where they both wanted to kind of do the same thing, and it ended up with dupreeh on the extremities rather than Kjaerbye. And obviously, when dupreeh came back to his position, he started shining again and stuff like that. So, but there was a period in North where I feel like he went on like a more of a lurking role as well. But I'm just trying to work out when that was.
Mate, they tried everything over there.
Yeah, the thing is, they changed so many players in that time that I just don't remember how that worked. I think it was when MSL left. I think Kjaerbye switched around somewhere else, and then he came back to like a more of an entry position. It's just hard to remember.
I think overall, when you look at the change from Bymas to Kjaerbye, right, you would say that it's a definite upgrade in terms of experience. And look, firepower is debatable, but I think that's where obviously the experience trumps it, and Kjaerbye's going to, be finding himself in more comfortable situations. But I had like people asking me about this, and they're like, "Oh, well, what do you think? Why didn't they stick with Bymas?" And it's like, well, if you're FaZe and you want to win immediately, it goes back to what you were saying before, Zeus. Players want to win now. They don't want to wait the 6 months to get that trophy. If FaZe wanted to wait out the rest of the online season, let's say the rest of 2020 is online. I don't know. Let's hope it's not, but let's just assume it is. And they had Bymas and they get a chance to train him up and go through all those matches in the gauntlet of online Counter-Strike again. He probably comes out the other end as a diamond, right? And they've got themselves a really solid fifth who's young and keen and hungry, and he's going to be around for a couple years. Whereas with Kjaerbye, he's only 22, but it's like this is more of a pick where it feels like they do want to win now, right? They want to just have that upgrade of experience, and then potentially this will help them get across the line. Now, I don't know. Do you still talk to Cold much, Zeus? Is that what it feels like?
I still talk to Cold a bit, but it's more not so much about CS. I just ask him how he's doing. Like, I get the feeling of being a guy in another country, right? When I'm like, even though he has his teammates there and friends, it's not the same thing being all alone. So I don't really get too much involved in CS with Cold or the MIBR guys for that matter. I'm trying to keep it more personal now.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess what we can do is we keep this one moving, because We were just talking about Bymas, and he's now the 6th member of mouz Sports. What was the wording of this, Striker? It was a developmental player or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Something along those lines. I'm not entirely sure what that's going to mean. That's like fairly vague term for a new player to bring in. But I feel like it's just one of those things where he's just going to come in whenever somebody's underperforming or something like that. Put pressure on the players that you already have on the team. Boost their motivation and stuff like that. Knowing that they have somebody on the sidelines waiting for his chance to come into the active roster. So I think it's just one of those moves where Bymas was basically like, I imagine he was pretty much free. I don't think he had like a long contract in FaZe or anything. He probably just got out the second that he was replaced by Kjaerbye, or if he didn't, he was probably pretty cheap.
Just if he was even on a contract, right? Like,
yeah, that's what I would assume anyway. That he was just like a trial / stand-in type thing, where he didn't even have a long-term contract or anything. So I think mouz just like jumped at the chance to have somebody like who was coming up in the scene and had a bit of an experience with a big team that will just put pressure on the players that they already have in the roster.
What do you think of this idea overall, Zeus? It's obviously similar to the Astralis one that we were talking about, but somebody like Bymas, let's say in North America, I don't know, let's say that there was just some kid who was nuts and he looked like he was going to be the next big thing and you could sign him for EG and keep him as a developmental player. Would you want to go for something like that, or would you prefer he goes out there, he frolics around, he plays in zePUG Gods and gets that experience and then you pick him up when you want him? Like, what do you feel about this kind of a move?
I think my position as an organization would be different than mine as a coach for the team, right? As an organization, it's 100% smart. You pick up a player who's going to be in the future, you save on the buyouts, you already practice, even if you already sign them now, loan them out to a team to get that experience, right? You don't have to let them play for zePUG Gods. You can have them on your roster and loan them out, like, oh, you're going to play this season, get the experience there, that kind of a thing. It's just, my thing is, at least in my background, right, MIBR, LGSK, these orgs were a lot centered around us. So in a sense, we had too much power as players. And if someone did something like that, like they tried to do in Immortals, oh, we put Horvey there as the 6th guy. It just backfired and just like it made the situation worse. And you screwed over your starting 5 because now they're fighting and they're fighting with you as an organization, things like that. I think logically speaking, like in theory, it's amazing if you can have a 6th guy who's going to be there to motivate your guys. Be like, if you fuck up, there's someone that's going to take your spot and everything like that. I think it works. I think in North American organizations, it tends to work more, at least from my experience. I don't know how it is in Europe, right? But in NA, there does seem to be a lot of the structure of like, this is the coach, this is the roster, you guys are players, you don't have to be the best friend, but you have to learn how to work together and be all that. And so I think a 6th player might be an interesting thing in, let's say, an EG, a Liquid, or something like that. It's one of some of these orgs can take this thing to heart. I think in other ones, it's a bit harder. Like I said, these teams that are more still, let's say, a little bit in an older age in the sense that it's the team, it's us, and that's it. It's going to be impossible to put a 6th guy in there. It's just going to mess things up.
Okay, so that's probably something which you would assume maybe teams will always keep an identity like that. I was thinking that maybe everybody eventually transitions into being, more of the structured style, but it might not happen that way, right? Because Counter-Strike is so tied with the 5 players in the server that it could come through that culture through the same kind of way that you guys came up with the Brazilians back then. Now, I don't want to dig too much into this one here. I want to get into the topic that I've been waiting for, ladies and gentlemen. This is my favorite one. It's Liquid, adreN. Now, it's not my favorite because adreN's out. I actually thought adreN may have stayed around. They might have kept him there to, be not maybe a handover with Moses coming in or staying there as like an analyst. Apparently, I was talking to Jason earlier today. They already have an analyst there who's been doing a good job for them.
A new one too, I think, too.
I think his name's HEPA, HEPA, I think.
Yeah, and I think he got in like very recently, so I wouldn't have seen him going out.
Okay, so we've obviously got Grim coming in for Nitro's replacement. We all know that's happened. And then the adreN replacement, like adreN came in after zews and then went on to have like a dream run to start last year. Wins the Intel Grand Slam. I'm sure he has a lovely little bonus check in the mail somewhere along the lines. But the team, when they tapered off, he was obviously still there. And there seemed to be criticism because Eric's not a super vocal, jump around like you and me type guys. He's much more calmer than we are. He's less of a crazy person, I guess. So we couldn't really tell from the sidelines what he's contributing to the team, and he's obviously was contributing something. But in their gameplay, it was still very similar to when you were there. I think they actually became less strat dependent when you left. I think they moved further into being more of an individual team just from the Counter-Strike that especially after their run right there. So we'll start with you, Zeus. Having Moses come in here as a coach, did this one catch you off guard?
It did, and it didn't. It didn't in the sense that he talked to me about it. So like when he talked to me and caught me off guard, like, okay, now this makes sense, right? But yeah, so I think it was surprising for everyone because one, Jason was so solid in what he already did as tier 1 caster, reference and ace bald eagle. We all love him, all that kind of stuff. But I think he's gonna do good there. I told him, like, when he had that call, I'm like, you need to gauge what you want. Like, if you're up for new titles, know that it's a different, like, the grass is always greener on the other side. It's not all perfect here in the coaching world. You have to work your ass off, and I'm sure you're used to it and things like that. But if you still have that fire in your ass to compete, I think his personality fits well with the Liquid boys. I really do.
I think that's the point there that you make, right, about having that competitive drive, or like the way that I've been framing it in my head lately. And when people ask me, they're like, oh, do you miss playing? It's like, well, I don't really miss getting owned. Like, I don't miss losing, and I don't miss having to play like fucking hours upon hours of deathmatch, right? And I don't miss that. But what I do miss is competing and having skin in the game. And I think that's the biggest difference, right? Is the sense of when I and Jason, same boat, like, is when we go in and do our job, we're going to put on like an entertainment product, right? We're going to go out there and do our best to make it entertaining for the viewers based off of the games that are happening. And whether MIBR win or whether EG win or whoever the fuck it is win or lose, it doesn't actually matter to us, right? Like, I care a little bit more if 100 Thieves win or lose, but that's obvious. I'm sure that Jason obviously cared when North American teams are doing better or worse or whatever, but it's not the same. Like, you don't get the same feeling.
You're a fan. You're not part of the action, right?
Yeah. And I miss that. Like, losing is the worst feeling in the fucking world. But maybe, like, you know, you need some of that in your life. And I think for Jason to kind of pick up this challenge, which it is, right? You have to think about how long he's been casting for now. Obviously watching the game very, very closely, but it's different skill sets, right? Completely. But I think I consider myself pretty good friends with Jason. Spent a lot of time with him over the last couple of years, and he was always the most sensible, like, and responsible and adult and clearest mind and vision on things and he would always be the mediator, right? And I think from a people person kind of angle, looking at him there coming into this team, which is bound to be full of massive egos at this point, right? Like, you just have to look at some of the names in there. I guess they're probably friends, but still there's quite clear visions of how to do things. So having him come in, I think, like, having a person like him to mediate that could be very good for Liquid.
Definitely.
I don't know how it's going to work. Well, hold up, he's undefeated right now, so far so good for Moses. But Striker, what did you make of this? Because I guess this probably, like most people, was coming from left field.
Yeah, I did not see that coming at all. Didn't hear anything about it. Obviously, didn't get leaked, which is surprising. Which is honestly surprising in this kind of a move of such a stature. I was gutted in one sense, just because Anders and Moses became kind of my favorite duo over the past few, I don't know, maybe like a year or something.
Okay.
So yeah, that's one part of it. The other one, obviously, like, having a change in your life is usually pretty good. You know, take it from somebody who's been at HLTV for 7 years. Every now and again, you just think about, you know, want to have a bit of a change in your life, want to have a different challenge and stuff like that. And having skin in the game and just like the competition part of it is obviously massive. Especially Zeus called you guys like fans, which is not even what you are. You're supposed to be impartial. You're supposed to, you know, look at both teams, the competitors in the same way. Mm-hmm. So you don't even, like, you're essentially not allowed to be a fanboy of one team. Obviously, you took that a little bit differently with 100 Thieves.
Yeah,
chat,
why not?
But that's obviously okay. But, you know, you're just supposed to be impartial most of the time, at least.
And that's the job, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You just have to be reasonable with your stance towards every team. You can't really just prefer one over everybody else. And that's just, obviously, that means you're going to lack the emotional side of it. You know, you're not going to get fired up when this team wins, the other team wins. You're just going to, if you're there for the Counter-Strike, you're passionate about Counter-Strike, you're obviously going to enjoy it. We all do. But it's different to when you are an actual fan of one team. You know, when I think back like 8 years before I started writing, before I started looking at the game a little bit differently, it's just a different feeling. So I get it from that side.
But like with Chad, it's his friend. So on air, he's like, "No, this is normal." And then behind the scenes, like, "Yeah, fuck yeah, man, let's go." You have to.
He's not,
you
it's
have
not even
to
behind the scenes anymore, man.
Yeah.
He doesn't
I think
hide
that
it.
I think on what you were saying, just the change up, it's always good. Especially like not always good. It's always a risk, but it's like I'm gonna give an example from me. I've been coaching and I have skin in the game and I feel it, but nothing compares to like what even with Chad was saying. I didn't have to lose until then. I had to fill in for MIBR because all of that was going on, and we made semifinals of that IEM Chicago. Like the feeling of that, of having that much competition and involvement, is amazing. After that, we had to practice and lose. That all sucked, and I remember the hardships of being a player again. But when you just change your environment and you have something to fire you up and just like I don't know what it is. It's something about all of us in CS in general. I don't care if you're matchmaking or whatever. You don't want to lose in any way. And I think Jason his level-headedness is going to be amazing for that. But I think we're going to see a little bit of a different side of him, where like when his emotions start to get the best of him, when things get out of control, because it happens to all of us. And I'm excited to see that for him because it's hard to get that out of him. But I think he's going to, most of all, he's going to enjoy the fuck out of coaching. It's taxing, but it is so much fun. Like when he gets on that stage and sees an insane play going on in front of him, because we don't have that much control or any at that point, right? It's on someone else. So we're literally we're the number one fan in the world watching from the best seat in the house. That's what happens. So like, I think he's going to enjoy that, and he's going to kick ass doing it because of his personality.
Well, you're getting me more excited.
Yeah,
you're helping me make my decision, mate. I just had like 2.5 months off, right? And I've just been sitting for the first, probably the first month and a half, maybe 2 months. Maybe it was 2 months on the nose. It was just me in this house in Malta, and it's like, I could play games, I could do all these things, but I got jumped deep into like self-reflection and thought, and I was like, okay, so I've been doing this for so long, and then like I was having meetings with people and whatever, and I was like, oh shit, like there's exciting stuff out there, and now you're like pumping it up even more. Like I see you guys standing behind them, man. Like you're watching a guy in like a 1-on-2, and you've like standing there and you got your hands behind your head and shit, and like you're not even in the server, but like the emotional attachment that you have to obviously all the hard work that you put in and the team and the brotherhood and all that shit. Man, that's the shit I miss. Like that right there is why, like, look, I would hazard a guess, Zeus, that you do a shitload more work than me. Like I would say without a doubt. Like when I go into work, for me, it's I watch all the games and then I just get to riff about it. You guys are going into the fucking detail of the game, right? And I think about what you guys are doing in comparison to what I'm doing. I'm like, these guys are fucking cracking the code here. But the idea of having that extra push as an individual, I think like that is a trade-off. It seems worth it now. It probably doesn't seem worth it when you're in it and you're fucking losing all the time. But yeah, look, sounds good. Fucking sign me up.
It does. Like I said, it is a lot of work because we have to be coaches in general. We have to prepare the day. So before practice, we have 2 or 3 hours preparing, and then we have to watch the whole practice, and then we have to review that and get it ready for the next day or get it there. So we're doing everything the players do and a little more. But at the same time, yeah, when it loses, it sucks. But when you have that one moment, that one highlight or something like that, it's just so much fun. Because I'll just say it, like it's like I'm playing, but I have someone better than me playing. Thank God. So that's the feeling I get, because you are invested. You do put your life into this and your work. So I don't care if it's someone else playing. It's you're winning there as well. So it's like all the emotions that come with it are the most insane thing. And that's like, as much as these 5.5 years have been taxating, I don't think about quitting anytime soon, just because it's just that drive and that competition is just, it's so much fun. Like at the end of the day, it's so much fun. And yeah, we don't have like as much time off, but then it's that work hard, play hard kind of thing. When we do have that one day off, let's just fucking all go together because we worked our asses for this. Go nuts.
Sure. I still remember like either talking to you or seeing you in an interview or something. I think I was talking to you, and it was about like it was on cache, and you threw it from we call it useless. It's over towards like B storage side, and there was a decoy, and the decoy landed in front of the squeaky door, and it opened inward, so Fallen could pick into the site. I remember either talking to you or talking to I think this was probably back like E-League days or something like that, and we're like on the patio.
I remember this was Katowice 2016.
Shit.
That was that event.
I don't think I was at that. I don't know when I would have been talking to you about it then. It must have been later.
But that's when that came up, because there was a LG video where I'm telling Fallen the idea in an elevator, and the guy caught it, and we used it, and he opened it against Fnatic and caught Dennis.
Oh shit! Okay, well, the story's even better than I remember it. Yeah, but I just remember like hearing stuff like that, and it's like that's so cool. Like it's a little detail like that, but like those kind of things are what you remember, right? So. Do we want to talk anymore about Moses, Striker?
We can just close it up with, I find it funny that in combination with the meme that came out like 5 years ago that Moses hates Liquid, he just like hates on everything that they do.
Now he's coaching him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just find it like a funny coincidence.
It's come full circle. All right, so maybe you can take some of the creamy Moses jokes over there to Liquid with him. We could probably do some with Liquid and Cream. I don't know. We'll work it out. But we're going to move now talking about the ENCE news. So, Striker, can you confirm this? Because, look, people don't realize I read the headlines, right? And unless it's like super interesting news, I'm probably not going to dive into it because there's so much fucking shit going on that you can't keep up with all of it. But this one right here, if I was told rightly, xseveN will still be used for ENCE at majors. Is that how it's going to work?
For this cycle, that's what they said. Obviously, they might have the option to do it later as well, but just for this cycle, because of our RMR points, they don't want to lose that 20% with another player. So they just are going to use him for the rest of the cycle. And what happens later, we don't know. That just wasn't said, but I imagine it's just for this.
Okay, so he's gone to HAVU, right? Which is the second best Finnish team. Is that fair to say? There was
like some losses to Kova, who are like the third coming up type team, but still, I think most people would consider them the second best team. Yeah.
So it's strange that this has happened considering the Kjaerbye situation, right? Because in the future, things are going to get more difficult for ENCE. Does this read to you, Zeus, that they maybe bring someone else in for those situations, or they're not putting a lot of weight in majors?
Their reasoning for keeping the lineup, I get it, especially because we're so far down the line, like 20% of your points or whatever it is a huge hit. But I'm not gonna lie, I haven't even been following ENCE that much. Their roster rules just seem so crazy. They haven't been that much like dominant in any sense. So they're just.
I mean, they have a high placing though. They're 5th in the RMR. So at this point, if the RMR stayed as it is,
oh no, I'm just saying like
as a challenger.
I haven't been watching them as much, so I can't say as much. Like they're not that highly on my list of the teams that I'm watching at the moment, just because they don't seem to be the ones that have it all together. Like they might have one or two sick players here doing some things, but I don't see that crazy tactical approach coming or that innovation that Big does or something like that. So I'm probably not the best one to comment on them because on them I really don't have much of a position.
Okay, well that's fine. I didn't want to stick. Look, we had a rule there. There was a certain period of time where we wouldn't talk about MIBR. There was a certain period of time where we wouldn't talk about the Polish VP because we just got into a shit show. I think ENCE entered that column for a little while there. So we'll keep it moving.
Just one last comment about this. Sure. I feel like this came from xseveN as somebody who probably didn't really enjoy the position that he was in, where he would only play. It's like the reverse Kjaerbye, where he would only play the biggest tournaments, where Kjaerbye can't play only the biggest tournaments. So obviously both situations suck, but I would imagine xseveN's sucked more just because he would like sit out maybe like 3/4 of a year or something like that. Yeah, so that's just a shit position to be in as a player. So I feel like he just wanted an out. He had a team to join, so he took that. And like another theory that I have is potentially like Kjaerbye's situation with Valve is improving, and potentially there's like an unban coming, and so ENCE just were okay with letting xseveN go. That would be another angle that I could see being true. So who knows? I think we'll just find out with a bit of time.
Yeah, look, it's not impossible that the ban gets turned around, right? Like we had Robin, who was wrongly banned, right, back in years ago. Yeah, but it did take a long time, and now he's playing an endpoint, and they actually we're going to dive into them very shortly when we talk about the DreamHack Open Summer. But it's not impossible. So I'm trying now. I always say this like every second episode, but I'm trying to be like more positive and open minded and all this stuff. So maybe it's going to all work itself out. But one thing I don't know if I'm going to be able to be positive about, everybody. And I was arguing with myself today regarding my position and how I kind of wanted to take this. And then I realized I'm like an irrational person who just at the drop of the hat will just spark up and start spouting absolute shit. So I stopped thinking about that and just thought we'd come in here and talk about it. Now, if you missed it, the CSPPA rankings have come out. Now, Striker, are you able to give a base for people on not on how they've come about their rankings, but more so why they think their rankings need to exist? Do you have a good grasp on that? I can do my best take on it, but
yeah, exactly. Well, essentially, it's been a topic for a while that our rankings are not fit for invites and stuff like that for a few reasons. I guess the main of which would be that it's not transparent. We just don't put the formula out, which, I mean, to be fair, like, who would expect a private company to put out a formula that is obviously working, that is obviously effective at what it does? We wouldn't want to just freely put that out there for anybody to grab and steal. So why would we ever do that as a private company, especially when we never set out to have this much influence with the ranking? We just observe what's happening in the scene and we just rate it as best as we can, right? We didn't make all these teams, put clauses in their contract about like making the top 20. We didn't make tournament organizers, place or do invites based on our ranking. That's all coming from other parties. We're in no way responsible for what people do with the ranking, right? It's just we never pressured anybody into that position. So I think it's like you're looking at the wrong side if you want to blame us for these kind of things. So that was, I guess, the main reason why CSPPA felt like they had to do their own ranking, because they just wanted to see how exactly it works. And obviously, like, people will be skeptical about why certain teams, jumped over this one or that one, or why this position is this way or that way. And there's just always going to be criticism, no matter which formula you're going to use. Somebody's going to get butthurt about like losing a couple of spots that doesn't really make sense to them on the surface. So from that point of view, I guess I get it. The problem is that obviously, as CSPPA, they claim how independent their ranking is, but at the same time, they have a committee made out of players and tournament organizers and stuff like that, which I feel like is in direct conflict with a claim that your ranking is independent of teams. What do they call it? Like financial interests and stuff like that. Obviously, if you have a player committee, those players will argue for their own gain rather than for something that's going to work for the scene, the best for the scene as a whole. They're going to be selfish, and that's just a realistic view on it. So to claim that it's independent is at the very least is optimistic.
Now, this is a problem that I have a lot. Actually, is the fact that people seem to think that the players know best. Unfortunately, the thing that they know best about is going on in the server, not the format, not the money system, not how the ranking should be done, not how a broadcast should be done, not how long a halftime break should be done. Players know how to play Counter-Strike very, 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 very well. Right? That goes without saying whatsoever. But there's so many other factors to our business now, right? Of Counter-Strike, of this entertainment product, which is what we're putting on for the world, that exists, that I feel need to either be explained to these guys, or someone needs to come in and say, listen, you have to kind of let certain people not control, but certain people know better in certain situations, right? Like, I would always say this when we had the debate back, maybe even when we had this show going. I would always come in and say that the players want the opportunity to fuck up as many times as they want in a tournament and not get knocked out. You want as many chances. Like, for me, I would have loved going to a major and not having to play randomized best of ones, right? Like, what the fuck, right? I would have loved to have been able to play in these Swiss formats where you get at least some of we had one period of time, was it the Starlight one, where all of them were best of threes. Like at some point, the trade-off between what is best for the player and what is best from an entertainment and viewer standpoint, which is where the revenue comes from, they're unbalanced, right? Like, a format that goes for fucking a month is probably not very sustainable from a money point of view. There's a lot of these things, and this ranking, right? The reason that I'm kind of relating this is because if we have the players in control of their own ranking, it's only the players that exist now. I've seen complaints from players who aren't part of the CSPPA, right? What the fuck happens to those guys? Do they get no say in how these things are done? We're not even right now diving into the details of how their ranking is done and formulated, which, look, I watched the video or listened to the video that they did with Jordan, right? He's obviously just been, this is nothing against nothing. Ha, 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 ha. But they've obviously given him something to read, and he's read it. He's done the VO for it. But I'm listening to it, and one of the things is to do with, so to protect the players from rank decay when they're out, when they're injured or they're out for burnout. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, this is fucking dangerous. Like, what direction are we going in right now? Because if we're going to protect players when they're burnt out, we're not encouraging the competition anymore. Like, there has to be a better solution than having a ranking which facilitates people who feel like they need to take time off, right? Like, if you get injured in tennis and you can't go to the tournaments, you're not going to get the fucking points, right? That's just what's going to happen. And I don't know if we can. I like I said, I'd have to look into more of the details of how all of this is meant to be. Yeah,
I can explain this protected ranking thing just from reading the whole rule book that they put out there with the announcement. And basically, I feel like it doesn't even accomplish what it set out to do. Just because at this point, anyway, right? I'm not sure if I dropped out. I don't see. Can everybody hear me? Oh,
yeah,
okay, good. Because I just got lagged.
Well, the storm's coming, mate.
I think it's gone away. I don't think it accomplishes what it set out to do, just because basically the only thing that the protected ranking does is when somebody is out and a team uses a stand-in at the tournament, they will get the full points. Meanwhile, in our just to compare it to our system, you would lose the 20% points that you get with a stand-in once you come back to your original roster, right? You just get 80% of your points from a tournament that you play with a stand-in because you haven't played it with your full lineup. That's how our system works anyway. And how their system works is just you get the full points for the stand-in, but the problem is you are still forced to play that event if you want to get the points. You're not going to get protected by skipping an event. If like a whole team or like multiple players of a team have to skip it out, then you will just lose the points entirely. So you're just still forced to play as many tournaments as possible in order to get as many points as possible. So it doesn't really accomplish what they said they wanted to do, which is just like give players and teams the chance to give players break or even entire teams break. It just doesn't really do anything like that.
Yeah, Zeus, like obviously you guys are loving this because you guys are first in the world according to these rankings right here. But
the best ranking.
And I don't know how much you're aware of like how the rankings come about, if the players have talked to you about it, if even any of your guys are in that circle where they were, I don't know, not decision makers, but giving their input. But what do you make of this whole CSPPA ranking situation? Because you as coaches, you guys don't have any protection like this, right? This is something which is the players are doing almost for themselves.
Yeah, coaches, we have zero input in CSPPA. We don't know what goes on in there or anything like that. We're actually advised against being led in the loop in that sense. I think just in generally with the ranking one, even though we're number one, I think that ranking is a little bit crazy, but I don't know how they're going to set up a little over time, right? But I think that the problem with rankings in general is like, one, we don't have a set system in any way. We're not a League of Legends where we have like these set leagues. So players in NA are going to have different set of tournaments than players in EU, than different than CIS. So we're not all on equal grounds from a beginning point. So how can we expect the rankings to be 100% accurate? Any ranking, I don't care what it is, because it's already coming from uneven grounds. I think the problem we have with these rankings are ESL has their ranking, HLTV has their, which is separate, but people use it on normal, and now CSPPA. I mean, there's probably other ones like Gosu Gamers, which no one uses.
Nobody uses that one.
But like, the problem is the favoritism from organizers. Now, which one are they going to be using? That's what scares me as a coach. Is it going to be purely the CSPPA one just because it's CSPPA? Are they going to still use HLTV? ESL always use the ESL one, at least for invites, right? So we might come to a point where each event organizer is using their own ranking of choice, which is what favors them in the business, be it for, this has the best viewership team, so we want to use this ranking, that's why we're going to say it. Like one tournament's going to come, no, we're the players tournament, so we're going to use the players rankings, it's going to be the fairest one. I just don't know how that translates towards professionally in the scene as coming to a really more balanced scene where the best teams are playing against the best all the time, and the viewership, because I do get that all that has to be factored in, which is why we do have the invites to these major events. It's not going to be like they're going to invite the number 30 team in the world, but if you're still competitive, they're like, if it's a one spot difference, they're still going to favorite the viewership rather than just the position, things like that. I don't know. Like I said, I think that the problem with having too many rankings is just to each. There's going to be, our event wants this, so we're going to use their ranking as basis just because it fits our agenda, basically.
Yeah, and there are solutions to this, right? Like Striker was making a very good point. Like HLTV.org never set out with the idea that people were going to be putting things in contracts. Like, isn't that insane that like it's gotten to the point where, hey, if you guys make top 20 in HLTV.org's world rankings, we'll give you a pay rise, or like those incentivized bonuses are things that I don't know if anybody, look, I'm sure if we all put our fucking goggles on, looked in the future, somebody would have come up with that, was probably going to be the thing. But it wasn't on the mind, I'm sure, when HLTV.org came out with theirs. And the fact that it's being framed from a lot of players I see on Twitter, like basically that HLTV.org is in control of their own fate. No. The org that you're working for or the tournament that you want to get invited to are the ones choosing to use this. In my mind right now, the ranking for the best team in the world, it doesn't even fucking count because we can't even all play each other. So right now, in my mind, it's just a power ranking of how do you weigh the regions. Oh, North America, well, they've got some better teams now than what they used to in the past, so maybe we'll give them a little bit more. And well, Europe, Big's doing really good online. Like, you're having to do these balancing acts, which doesn't even fucking mean anything in the right now. And look, everybody knows, well, not everybody, but a lot of people think that I'm an ESL shill. And I do like working for ESL. They're my favorite company to work for. I have a really good relationship with them. They let me do a lot of things on broadcast that I don't think would happen anywhere else. So yeah, I do like working for them. But their whole system right now is, yeah, they do have a world ranking, but it gets confused with their ESL Pro Tour points system as well. And like, they've now put themselves in a position where obviously from a business standpoint, they don't want to be beholden to HLTV.org, right? If you're a company, you don't want to be using HLTV.org who could, like, let's just say tomorrow HLTV shut down and you based all your rankings off of a company now that you have no control or no stock in. So if you're a big company like ESL, you want to have your own rankings so that you're able to at least have some consistency there. Now theirs have been scrutinized as well. Everybody's ranking has been scrutinized at some point, but the thing here that we all need to work out, that is the dangerous part, is how do we want tournaments to be approached in the future? Because if it gets closed down and the only way it works is through however you're ranked in the world, or if this CSPPA one, they start strong arming tournaments, you have to use this one, then it can become like a boys club. And this is where I start to get really worried, right? Because the conflict of interest of having players deciding how they're ranked and we don't have all the players involved, it's like,
it doesn't really make sense in the first place, does it?
What's going on there? Like, we don't have, like, I don't know. There's so many flaws in this right now, and there's so much more that that needs to probably be discussed and looked into. Like, the fact that we're about to go into 2 to 3 months of nonstop Counter-Strike again, there's our fucking problem. I know COVID's going on. I know that we're lucky to still have jobs and still work and still be doing this. But the fact that these teams, I know, are about to just go for the next 2-3 months straight with, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 days off a week.
Yeah.
And most of that time you'd be practicing anyway, prepping, because you know fucking the guys on the come up are spending 12 hours in the server every day, watching every single one of your fucking demos, hungry to take your position because they want a spot in an organization, making really, it's just like, that is non-stop. It is just fucking non-stop. And I think right now, this CSPPA ranking, I think it was probably rushed out the door, right? Because didn't they have a deal that
Definitely
they had to do with Flashpoint?
Like,
didn't they have? They had to get it out for Flash. Wasn't that what the contract dispute
that's
was
what
about?
They originally they wanted to. I think it just like fell apart when they realized they wouldn't be able to create the system in time. That's my theory anyway. It's not like something that's been official or anything, but just in general, just looking at how the ranking works and how clearly flawed it is, how many like obvious flaws that should not be there in the first place are there. It's pretty obvious that they didn't think it through completely. They didn't really test it out and seen how it works in certain scenarios, as like people like Lurpus correctly pointed out, with how the math works in terms of if it's a 14 tournament actually essentially gives the winners much more points than a 16-team tournament with the exact same competition, or like with the best teams in the world. So it's just like those kind of flaws make me think that it was definitely rushed out for, I don't know what reason though, because we don't really have tournaments at this point that need like a special ranking, especially as you say, we're fucking regionalized. Like most of the tournaments will have a pretty clear view on who the best teams in the region are, and we don't really care about how they stack up against each other. We just want to see like which teams of that region you want to invite. So I'm not even sure why it was rushed out in the first place at this time, but it's just like the main concerning factor of it is that it could become a thing that CSPPA holds over TO's heads, just because they decide which tournaments are placed in the ranking. They don't. It's not like us where we basically involve every single tournament that is going on. Obviously, we decide like how much it's weighed and based on certain criteria, but we definitely include pretty much every tournament that we have on the site, outside of like charity events and stuff like this, where nothing is realistically on the line. But we just consider everything, right? But while CSPPA can choose who which tournaments they're going to involve and how they're going to be weighed as well, to a certain degree. And they've also put this 50,000 prize pool limit, so nothing below $50,000 is going to get involved, which obviously puts Tier 3 Counter-Strike in a really weird spot when it comes to the ranking. They're basically going to be they're basically going to be cut out from the ranking unless they make like a DreamHack Open Summer or anything like that. So it's just going to get very, very vague below like the top 30 or even top 20. Below top 20, it's probably going to be difficult to rank those teams.
Okay, well, we're going to move on from this because we're chewing through time.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, we are smashing through this here today. So we're going to quickly check in with the DreamHack stuff that's been going on. Lucas, I'm sending you a link right now. This is the European side of things. So if you guys have been missing this, it's been going on over the past week. DreamHack Summer, it's online. Everything's online in case you missed the memo. And right here, you can just take a look at how these two groups went. It doesn't really feel like anything major went wrong here. You know, having Big go through and Complexity go through, those were the ones that I think we were expecting. Endpoint did put up a decent fight in some of the games that I was watching. I think they got a little bit against Big. They probably could have even closed it out.
Well, they beat Mad Lions.
Yeah, but Mad Lions with Innocent was one that we were skeptical of in the beginning, right, Striker?
Yeah. I mean, I watched a good portion of that game as well. It's just like it was especially funny that Mad Lions started out that series with a 16-0 win on Vertigo, and they still lost it, which is curious. It doesn't really not something that you see every day. I think it's only happened like once in the past with North and Mouse Sports at I think Stockholm it was, at least on LAN. So it's not really something that happens, but it just shows how inconsistent this team is at this point. Where they've only just brought in a new player, and it's just going to look a little bit shaky. And this is just the first evidence of that, basically.
Well, then in Group B, obviously, FaZe and Spirit 4 still having some wobbles. Maybe there could be some roster changes between those two teams. I don't know. There's a lot of firepower in both those teams, so it's weird that neither of them were able to get across the line there. So
I'm
Zeus,
surprised, honestly. Sorry, just in terms of CIS, that there's, as we were saying earlier, there's like 4 teams kind of competing for the number 2. Yeah. And there's like insane talent in some of those teams. There's like Shiro and XE Power, like kind of spread across those teams. So I'm almost surprised that none of these orgs like managed to put together like a deal for like some CIS secondary super team that would just start dominating everybody outside of Navi, basically.
There's a lot of names, like Mir's been on a tear lately as well, right? So you could throw a lot of players in the mix. But Zeus, looking at the teams that we have remaining here, Complexity, Heroic, Big, OG, are any of these names like ones that you're looking into on a regular basis, or are you keeping it pretty domestic at the moment?
Oh, no. Definitely always have to be on the lookout for Europe. Out of just all the backstage talk, it seems the Big have kept it up from end of last season to now, so they're the ones that I'm going to be on the Big lookout. Everyone's that I've talked to said they have been different in practice than everyone else. Everyone else is doable. Big is really hardcore, so I'm eager to see what they keep doing.
Oh shit! All right. What do you make about like obviously Complexity had some success over there with Blast, but what do you make about the OG roster? Because it always seems to be a bit of a mixed bag, that team.
They're a mixed bag. I think that. Well, this is my personal bias. I just remember playing Summit against them, and it was their first tournament, and they're yelling and they're shit talking. I'm like, you haven't done shit yet. Like, calm down. So I'm always going to be a little bit against them. I'm not going to lie. So I don't think that, they're a mixed bag, but I don't see their peaks being really high. Like, it may sound biased, but like I when they're good-ish to like a certain extent, but I never see them get past that barrier of, okay, they actually convinced me that they can like trade punches with the big dogs and keep trading consistently, because they'll have that one really good map and sometimes they'll win it, and others they look like they're really good and close, then they completely lose control of the match, and it's like a 12-3 becomes a 16-14 for the other team, or an overtime loss or something like that. And I very rarely see them like the consistency in the sense of started strong, bullied through the whole match, okay, that's how it ended.
Yeah, like I was watching their game against Complexity, and on Nuke it was looking like terrible. They picked it. They were on the T side. They were getting battered. I think MBK was having a real rough start to the game, and then they just called out like a bit of a ramp rush, and Alexi got a trade kill onto Obo at ramp, and then that opened up, and then they were able to post 4 rounds to close the half, and then they had a pretty decent CT side, but it all came from Alexi. Then they moved to Mirage. They lost that game 16-14 for those of you sitting on the edge of your seat at home, but then they moved to Mirage, and then Mirage it was 16-13, another close game, but another situation where they were getting battered, and then Alexi's dropped like an A ramp lurk smoke that he's come out with. He's used it as a one-way, and he's gotten a kill, and he's opened up, and then they've gotten the ball rolling again. And I always look at that and I go, people think that I'm very, very critical of OG, and I on broadcast, maybe I was having a bad day, maybe it was late, but I was a bit of a cunt, right? Like I look at the team and I go, there are a lot of good parts here. Like Volda at one point, we would always say he'd be the next guy to join Astralis, right? Alexi, good in-game leader. I've listened to him on the comms. He's got a good head. I like the way he mixes it up. Issa, when he was part of Hellraisers, it was a bit of a different story, right? He was part of the fragging duo. MBK, I think Duncan calls him the kingmaker, right? Like he's a very adaptable player. And then Mantu, the one that you wouldn't expect, the rookie, has been the star who's just gone through surgery. So when you look at all these parts on their own, I can see it working, but I don't see the mix of players working. It feels like there's too many veterans. Like Volda has been around a long time. Alexi, in terms of jump in, man, go for it.
No, I agree. It's just like Alexi. One, I never got how ENCE let him go because he seemed from the outside insane, right?
Yeah.
So he's a good part. And BK, legend. Like you talk about experience, this guy has been through it all in every situation. He's a guy that and even personality wise, you can see that he probably helps mold people there. Issa, like you said, star player, raw potential there, fragging power. Then you have Mantu, who is the guy that surprises all. Like he is actually pretty solid with his up. No, he's gonna low. His game is pretty solid. He can hit those shots consistently and keep going. So they have all of it there, and yet sometimes it looks so scrappy, but so scrappy.
Yeah, look, I don't know why we get like, no, I think we do. I think that there are just more teams that are better, right? I think that's probably the best way that I can put it. Like, I don't think that the players in the server for OG are bad. I just think that the teams that they're playing against have better mixes of players, or they have like a better rough star that'll develop something, or they have a better grasp on the way that they're approaching the game, or the way that they synergize. That's what I look when I look at OG, right? I said we'd keep this one going, wouldn't we? So, Striker, do you want to? Are you going to say something about this one, Zeus?
I was just going to say, do you think that they need more firepower?
I think so. I think that a roster change and someone young, right? Someone who's really, really hungry to kind of drag them, right? Because Mantu having an injury is probably hampered in the amount of time he wants to put into the game. And the other guys all probably, like, I think there was something that I saw, I didn't, like something to do with MBK talking about the amount he practices, like, or personal practice on stream. And
he puts a lot of time into the game as far as I know.
Well, that's what I thought, but this stream, I didn't watch the link. This is another time where I'm just talking out of my ass here. But I think that there was like a streamable link that was saying that he puts in like a lot of time when they're scrimming and pracking doing that. But then outside of that, he I could be completely wrong. So I'm sorry, Nathan, if I'm saying the wrong thing here. But that's what I had heard. But at the same time, I don't know what the direction OG want to go is, because I've had the chance to listen to Alexi call, and a lot of his like strats that he needs to pull out when they're in a bit of a hole, it feels like he's doing all the work, right? And then the players are collapsing it around, and that I like it. It's showing you're leading from the front, but it also, you don't want that to be your only tool. Yeah,
they're missing identity because, like, okay, if he's trying to call set strats and he has to do everything, then the identity of that team is not a strategical one. But at the same time, they're not a crazy fragging team. You don't see them running around like Fury either. So, like, what are you? At some time, you have to figure out what's your style. Which one are you going to, like, this 70% of the time we're going to beat this, the other 30 we're going to try to mix in the rest, right? But you have to have something in. With them, nothing comes to mind whether they're strategical, an aim-based, or just a mix of both. Like, it seems like every game they try to be one.
Do you put a timer on this, Striker? Do you, like, with a team like OG, I don't know what their expectations are. Right now, as per the HLTV.org rankings, they are 13th in the world. That's not, like, that's nothing to be sneezed at.
The thing is that they're not a team that people will get excited about and think that they're going to make a top 5 or anything. They're just not on that kind of a route. And I think a part of it is identity problems. And I think it makes sense from the standpoint that Alexi is always, obviously from ENCE, we know him to be pretty technical, to be pretty strategical, and like having a system that is very set in place. But I'm not sure he necessarily has the players for that. So I feel like that's where the conflict comes from, where like he's not entirely sure, or the players are not entirely sure how to be used or how to play in the system, and that just creates these weird variances where once they actually look like a really good, like a well-oiled machine, and then the next game they're just going to fall apart.
something that I think plays a part in this is these international rosters. You come from different schools of Counter-Strike, so it's like the habits the player falls into, everything like that. They may want to try to do it, but it's not their natural state. Like even at FaZe, which I think is the best example of the international roster, like they are the closest you can get to a tactical team, like because Yanko helps them and they want to do that. Like, but even then, they're still a lot more on the scrimmy side a lot of the time. Like they rely on those plays and everything like that. And they're the ones that are trying the most. So, like, not a diss to OG, but I think FaZe players in general are just one step above if you are taking that. And if they couldn't figure out fully tactical Counter-Strike, I don't think it's OG that's going to be able to crack that code either.
Zeus, you're welcome to come back on the show whenever you want. I have a bet going with Striker at the moment that I don't know the rules, Striker. Do you remember the rules? It's like
top
we have
three, 6 months for a top 3 ranking for 6 months straight has to be like three different nations, whatever.
Yeah,
I'm non-English speaking, obviously.
Over 5 years, Zeus, I've fucking really gone deep on this one right here. So I'm banking that international Counter-Strike just never works out, and they never consistently. It's working for me so far. It keeps resetting. Striker keeps getting a little bit disappointed every time it happens.
I have so much time. I'm not worried at this point.
Wait till we get halfway through.
Sure,
that's when we get halfway through, we'll reconvene.
Look, we get every year we get like a couple more like good international teams. We just had OG and Complexity at the end of last year.
That's true.
And Complexity are starting to make waves. You know, they're going to move into a position where they could potentially attack for that kind of a position. So the more international teams, like the more of a chance I have for one of them to actually make it work. So,
all right. Well, Lucas, bring up this next little slide for us, mate. I feel like I'm in school. Get calling to the teacher to fucking bring it all up. But we're going to look at the North American one just quickly here. We'll blast through this. There's not too much here to dig into, other than the fact that Cloud9 have lost to Team 1 yet again. I think I saw something on Twitter about them being like a 4 series losing streak.
Well, I think it's 3, and the 4th one was like the old lineup. So
okay. So they're struggling against Team 1. So both Brazilian team. Well, there's 3 Brazilian teams in Group B. 2 of them making it through. Furia in Team 1, and then we got Liquid and Chaos. Obviously, Moses has his semi-final debut tonight for Liquid, starting in a couple of hours from now, and then the Furia Chaos game. I think Furia Liquid is the most likely final here, right? Does that goes without saying?
I think definitely. I think that's one. Liquid's coming off of that honeymoon that always seems to happen. So, and the way they've just been playing up and so far, I think the last game wasn't as good for them. But the first match for both of these teams, I think, was nuts. The second one, I saw a little bit of downside from Furia and from Liquid, but they're still way above the competition. So the finals should be them. But in the finals, I'm gonna go Brazilian side. I'm gonna just say it. I think Furia is taking it just from. I haven't practiced Liquid, but Furia is looking good.
Okay. I guess Liquid have only recently all come back together, right? So they probably haven't even had that much practice coming in. And I saw the Furia guys; they were doing a lot of things outside. I'm not sure where they were, but they looked like they're having a good time.
they were, and the one they through their break, they kept like that healthy environment, right? They traveled together, did all that. So I think they reset a little bit. But in practices, it was a while since I saw something new in scrims. I called my attention, like, oh, this is a new one way. This is something different. So I think they have a few tricks up their sleeve that they're waiting for this final.
Okay, so I think we'll leave North America here because it's going down very shortly. Everyone can tune in after we're done with the show here. And I really want to hear from Zeus about what's going to happen with Cologne, because that's kicking off in only a couple of days. So maybe we'll start with the EU side of things. Let me just get you the link here, Lucas. So bring this one up for me. So for those of you who aren't familiar, ESL One Cologne, it's online. We're obviously still doing the region splits. Based on the COVID situation, MIBR are actually competing in Europe. They've come on over and gotten themselves a spot. A little bit of controversy there that potentially Godsent should have had that position. I don't know. I don't want to get stuck into that shit. It is what it is, right? The decisions have been made. I didn't make them. Someone else did. All right. So the teams, Lucas, we scroll down. We've obviously got Big, Vitality, Na'Vi, G2, Fnatic, FaZe, Complexity, Astralis, NIP, OG, Mouse Sports, MIBR, Heroic, Mad Lions, Heretics, and Sprout. Now, Zeus, who is your favorite here? Like, there's a lot of rosters that we maybe haven't seen for a long time, even new rosters we've never seen before. You're just going to go with the big hype?
I said I'm not going to go with the big hype to win just because on scrims they've been doing well. I think that they're going to have a really deep run. I think for some reason I'm having a feeling on Na'Vi that I think that they're going to still be pretty solid throughout of this. Like every time after a break, they just have, to me, they have a sick roster. They have a well-built roster in a general sense. I have zero inclination of why I'm saying Navi. It's just a gut feeling, but
okay.
Just going with that. I think Big makes it deep, and I'm going to go for the boys in the MIBR as well. I think they do better against European competition than they do NA in terms of playstyle.
All right. Well, I look at this here, Striker, and I see I see a Vitality who look like they were starting to get things together with Masuta. I see a G2 who are just on that cusp and doesn't feel like they can get across the line. But if they can find that, whatever that last little spark is, they're going to be super deadly. A FaZe who are always hungry now with more firepower, I suppose. And then the one that here, for me, I don't know what you're looking at, Striker, but my dark horse, NIP. Like, I don't know if they're much of a dark horse, because of I think now, if they've had more time with Hampus, they've been able to get in some good prac. I really like the look of that roster. Where are you looking for your upsets?
The problem is with FaZe that obviously they've just changed the lineup, but I kind of always liked how quickly they made new lineups work with FaZe. It's not necessarily about how consistent they were. They never were really. With every time they changed the lineup, they kind of won the second tournament that they attended and then kind of fluctuated back and forth. So I feel like FaZe are going to have a pretty good chance, even with what's going on, or even because of what's going on, because they just played, changed the player, going to get some fire in again, and fresh blood. They're one that I feel like are going to do well, especially because they're in a group that is just rather erratic, I'm going to call it, because they have Vitality in that group. They have Astralis who are just playing in with that new team. They have MIBR who we have no idea how they're going to look against European teams. G2 obviously who are kind of inconsistent, up and down a little bit. So they're entirely beatable on any day. So I feel like that group is just going to be really, really awkward. And it could be FaZe who just like to take advantage.
Yeah, let's look at the. You might have them up here, Lucas. Let's look at the brackets. Let's look at Group A's bracket here. So we got Big Sprout, OGNIP, Navi, mouz, Complexity, Mad Lions. The game here that I'm most interested in, it has to be the Navi versus mouz Sports matchup. When I spoke to Kjaerbye during the online stuff earlier in the year, and I was asking about what kind of strats or approach they were going to go for online CS, he was like, "Yeah, we'll just mainly be doing with the smoke gimmicks." Because I asked him about that Inferno execute that they had, where they played 4 players through alt mid with all the set smokes and mollies and shit. I was like, "You probably won't see too much of that." So do you reckon, considering how bad it went for mouz Sports at the tail end of last season, or how it went for mouz Sports at the first half of the year, basically, that they're going to come out with those geeky strats back in play, or you think they could be fucked?
Dude, it's hard to say this because I love all the mouz Sports guys, no joke, but I think they're kind of fucked because when I saw them doing well, so much was off of confidence plays, like Woxic balling out, just opping, re-peeking every angle that he shouldn't be, but getting those kills, and everything they were doing. They did have the Kjaerbye and S style where there's logic to the madness, and it's controlled. From the outside, if you're playing against it, it seems kind of chaotic, but I know that they know what they're doing. It's all very simple plays. Just group up 3 together, go overwhelm side, things like that. But to play that style, you need to be really confident you can't lose. If you hesitate to make those decisions, you lose your timing. It's as simple as that. And I don't know if a team that's coming off of the back end, having a rough patch and everything like that, is going to be able to just flip that switch. Oh no, new season, reset. Let's go into how we were playing before. So I think they might be a little bit screwed here. Rooting for them to prove me wrong on this one though, because if they can just flip that switch, they have one of the most talented rosters for that kind of play style that I see.
Are there any other matches here that kind of leap off the page for you, or anybody to look out for here on Group A?
I'm curious for Complexity and Mad Lions. I think there could be an upside there. Mad Lions, like you guys were saying, I think is a team that when they're on, they're on. They haven't, maybe since the roster changes, they haven't showed it as much, but I think it's crazy to discard it off of how the peaks we've seen from them before. They were having some really solid levels of play. Again, strategies that everyone was copying. Everyone had a Mad Lions on train or something like that they were doing. So depending on how the vetoes go for that, I could see an upset going on.
We were talking about the firepower disparity that's going on in that Mad Lions roster now, though. Weren't we, Striker, on the last episode?
On Mad Lions?
Yeah, because it was Bubsky and
Acor,
right? Who were the two and now Innocent coming in. I think Blame was saying that there might be more room for Shush now to potentially step up a little bit. But
I think I like that. I like that angle, to be honest. Shush has been performing really well.
I have to go back and look what Hunden's rating was on the team, bro. But Asilian's rating, man, it's almost as bad as what my stats were. And you feel like shit as an in-game leader, and you can't frag, and you don't know how to fix it. But having him come in was meant to be a firepower upgrade on Hunden, and right now, obviously, the last 3 months we've just had a break, so this is only the more super recent stuff. But his numbers just look not good, man. Like this team was the most promising thing to come out of Denmark, and now it's all in shambles. Like it kind of sucks to see it fall apart like this, because they were going in that right path, right? They were going like down the ENCE path of building fundamental CS and having a couple of star players and making it. And now it's like, fuck, they've just had to bring a Polish guy in. Like what the fuck has happened? I know it's
Crazy.
That's when you start to worry about, like, okay, is this like a contract issue? Are they unable to spend the money? Does nobody want to spend money at the moment because of COVID? I'd assume that's probably the case. Like, it's not just a Mad Lions issue. Hopefully this doesn't spiral out of control with too many other teams. But let's scroll down, Lucas, and take a look at Group B. What do you think of Fnatic coming in here, Striker? Because I don't want to say that
the last season pretty badly, right?
They lose. I don't want to say they lose focus, but it feels like they lose focus.
Okay. Well, it depends on what the break did for them, right? This is always such a weird period. I know this is like we're still online and stuff like that, but teams did have like a month to recuperate, and I feel like this time it's going to make even a much more of a difference than it would normally, just because of how crazy it was like for the previous 2 months, where teams played like every other day and had an official all the time. So that means they had to practice all the time as well. So I feel like the break should do a lot of teams a lot of good, and Fnatic might be one of those.
Okay, so it's just quickly, it's just hit 7. Yeah. Do you have to go? Do you
have
like bracket? Okay, cool. So
I'm good.
I was going to wrap it up if you had to bail. But looking at this bracket here for Group B, I'm curious on what your take here is this on Vitality, because obviously Alex going out as the in-game leader, it left a massive hole. Apex has had to take over, and then they brought in this kid that was basically only known from his pug prowess, Masuta, and in the beginning it didn't look great. He's starting to warm into it now. Yeah. What have you watched much of these guys?
I do. I mean, how can you not? That team
They've been
always
in quite a few finals, right? So.
Exactly. They're always up there, so you have to watch the playoffs. I honestly think they're probably one of the favorites, like if not the favorite for the group, even with all going on. I think that they're really solid. I mean, you can't discount ZywOo anytime, right? That guy can always just change the game almost by himself if things are set up properly. He hasn't been to the same level he was before, which is not saying much, because it's still insane even when he's like not at full ZywOo level. I think that G2 and MIBR is going to be a very interesting match. I honestly do. Like I said, MIBR, at least when they come off breaks, and I'm not saying that the whole season is going to be like this, but if you tend, the first tournament's always good. Like it was the Katowice for us, it was the Blast when we got back on land. We had really good showings against Liquid when they were number 1 in the world, like almost won that match, should have won. And it tends to be pretty good. FaZe Heroic, I think pretty one-sided, and Fnatic Astralis, I'm going to go with Fnatic.
Okay. Well, look, we know that occasionally the Swedes can pull one up on Astralis right there. I want to just grab that MIBR point for a second, because I think, especially from my perspective, we had the whole Furia MIBR drama go down on that stuff. People probably think that I don't like MIBR. That's not the case. I didn't like the behavior that went on there. They're two separate things. The team, when Gen.G joined, I was like, oh, this is fucking hype. Gen.G is like one of the hypest guys, right? If you're sitting around that dude and like the type of Counter-Strike player he is, and just how fired up you can see it, you're not getting excited. Like I thought that would have been lighting the fire under the older boys, right? The Fallens and the Furs who have been there for a long time to go, fuck yeah, we got another guy in here who's fired up. Let's get this one back on track. It didn't work out like that in the beginning right now. But I think when they've added TRK, to the team, he's actually fitted very well as like a safe pair of hands for them, right? I remember watching and being like, oh, okay, we're working with something here with this MIBR roster. And now that they're in Europe and they're having this boot camp, they're on the same footing as everybody else, right? Because you look at all these teams, we're looking at major winners and very experienced players, and people have been around the traps, and everybody's kind of just come off a break. We don't know exactly when everybody's gotten back and started playing, but when you look at this at the start of the season, this is the best chance for MIBR to pick up some big wins and build a lot of confidence going into the second half of the year, right? So if there was ever going to be a turning point for the core, right, for Fallen, Fur, and Tarko, obviously Tarko rejoined, I think this has to be the moment that they seize it. But G2 just feels like such a tough one up first, man. Like I look at that G2
it's
roster.
It's a big challenge.
I think the fact that Amanek has a 0.98 rating, like he's down the bottom there. I feel like when Amanek in the past he had a bit more freedom, he's a bit more clutch and stuff. Like if he steps up his play a little bit, I think that's what G2 need to push him across the line there. So it's not going to be an easy task for MIBR, but is this for you, because we'll transition into NA in a second, but is this for you coming off a break where you're the most scared because you don't know what people have been working on?
I wouldn't say the most scared, because I think everyone took a gigantic break. Like most of the top level teams I saw actually take a break. It was one of the first one. I was even talking to my friends. I'm like, this is the first one where I was able to take almost a full break, like other than some minor things that were going on behind the scenes. Most teams I look at those prac groups, they're not practicing. Everyone's traveling, doing everything. So I don't think we're going to see that much innovation.
Okay.
I'm not scared in that sense. For the European side, probably a little more, because over there I'm not seeing as much. So maybe I'm off on there, like who practiced there, who didn't. But for NA, I don't see as much. As for the MIBR G2 match, I agree, but I put my faith into, like, it's not my faith, but MIBR, they're the team that kind of, in theory, adapts to the opposition. If it's a really shitty match, they can lose to that really shitty team. If it's a really good team like Astralis was the number one, sometimes they can beat them if they're on point and whatever. And in that G2 match, like I think I put a lot of players on the personalities and how they are. Coming back from break, they showed to me that they're a team that are on the right path, on the path that want to compete and win still, because they decided to go through all that trouble, going to Europe, taking that risk to go on to the bigger challenges, biggest stages. Gen.G just had a daughter, had to leave her in Brazil to go on challenge. Like there's all this emotional. Brazilians were very motivated by emotion. So with all of that in their favor, I think they can become scary. And in theory, I'm supposed to be one of the guys that's not going to be rooting from them from being kicked from that team, but it's just that feeling, and I do root for them, but I do honestly believe that it's going to be a turning point, though. But because if they don't start really well, they had 2 shitty matches, basically almost get like, oh crap, right? Yeah. But they do have that chance right now, and I think that G2 is probably one of those teams that is going to be really hard. But if they get it, it's going to change their entire season.
All right.
I'm just curious about the play style that MIBR is going to come out with, and how that's going to how it's going to stack against European teams this time. Just because we've been talking about this for the past couple of months, how NA teams will have probably, succumb to like bad habits a little bit more than Europe, where they're going to get punished a lot more by a lot more teams anyway, just because they just have such a bigger variety of teams to play against. And MIBR might still be stuck in that mindset, in the NA mindset, where it has become a little bit more individualistic, I think. I don't know how zews feels about that, and how the NA playstyle has changed in the last few months.
I think that when I said that MIBR doesn't do so well in NA playstyle, because things have changed. NA is chaos. Like, you have Furia, you have us, you have Liquid. These are skill-based teams that get in your face, and literally you can take almost the rest of your keys away from the keyboard except for W, because we're going to push it and we're going to force you until you fail. In Europe, it's a lot more tactical-based, and they play the situations. And I think that's MIBR's game. That's how they like to play Counter-Strike. They want to play situations and try to outsmart the opponent. They don't want this kid running through a smoke with 2 flashbangs trying to headshot them. Right? Like, that's why I think over there they have a better chance of succeeding. Over here, and it's not just that. Then you take even the lower NA in a sense, right? Cloud9 is not doing well. Look at Cloud9 playing. They are flying shit at you. It's insane as well. Like, all of the NA region right now seems to be controlled chaos, and that's hard for MIBR to deal. I was on that side. I know how hard it is for us. Against Europeans, if there is a chance for success, it's over there for sure, because at least they'll be playing what they're comfortable. If they're not getting the results, then it's like, okay, they'll look at it and they'll be able to find tactical mistakes of where they were wrong. They can't just look at it and say, well, I couldn't shoot this guy. This guy had better aim than me this time. Like, that kind of a thing.
I'm just curious about the balance of how people get surprised by how MIBR play potentially, and the other way around as well. It's just like some bad habits that probably still stuck from those last few months. And I'm just curious about seeing how they're going to fare with that.
Yeah, the double AWP on the CT sides on certain maps, you just start to go, oh shit, like, how are they going to keep pulling this off? Like, how can they keep affording this? And then when it's not working, it's like, what you can't do anything on it. Like Inferno with the double AWP CT side, if you're getting run down and losing map control straight away, you're fucked. You're just dealing with executes and stuff, right? So I hope, because look, we used to say this back in the day when VP was good, right? Like the Polish VP, we would say that Counter-Strike was better when VP were a top team. It's the same with MIBR, right? Because
True.
the fan bases and stuff around these teams and the type of Counter-Strike and entertainment that they put on, you can't compare it to some of the other names. Like some of the other names that are good, they just don't bring the same level of hype and showmanship and excitement and all these things. And the reason that people loved MIBR in the first place is the whole story about them, right? If they could turn this arc around and become another top team, considering all the things that have happened, that would be good to see. But let's go closer to home. Lucas, bring up the NA side of things for me, mate. So we're going to take a look at... Oh, I've lost the link myself here. 1 second. We're clicking around. We're getting ready. Now, obviously, we have a man here who will be competing, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, in Group B with Cloud9, Liquid, Triumph, and themselves. Now, I'm not... You're obviously not sleeping on anybody here, right? We don't do that anymore. Once I slept on Cloud9, that doesn't happen anymore. But getting a taster, like getting a free shot at Liquid, right? That's basically what you have here to kick this one off. Zeus, is that like a feeling out match, or is that like a setting your dominance? Like, fuck you guys, we're gonna beat you no matter what. Like, how did you approach a game like that?
So, I mean, first we play against Triumph, I think, right?
Yeah, I'm just assuming you're gonna, I'm trying
considering that goes, I think we face off against Liquid. I think that this match for us isn't the big importance. We're going to put a big importance when we get to the playoff rounds. We want to feel them out here, probably. I think would be the route to go. Is chat
I think chat is...
Yeah. Sorry, I'm really sorry, everybody. Am I here?
Yeah, kind of.
Kind of.
I might stay quiet for a little bit. Striker, Zeus, you guys do the talking while I wait out this storm.
Well, yeah, Well, the angle that I wanted to take was just like you guys facing off against new teams, kind of heading into unknown, just because Triumph just changed a couple of players. Liquid obviously changed a coach and a player. Do you know at all how? Well, I mean, I'm sure you watched Liquid because they just played in DreamHack. But do you know a lot about Triumph and how they've changed since those two changes?
Triumph. I've been trying to watch the DreamHack matches, of course, for an age of stay in point. So we do see, but they haven't performed in any sense, right? All these teams. Liquid, I do agree, right? Liquid is more interesting to watch in the sense of what the changes they've done. Probably gonna, like, I've been joking with Jason behind the scenes. We're probably going to be facing off in quite a bit of finals together, right? So get his ass ready, kind of a thing. So no, but it's that. I think that it's gonna be first match for us against Liquid is gonna be a lot more of a feel out, but at the same time, I'm gonna put it that we're in an advantageous position because if we lose that one, it's only group stage and it's fine for us to turn that around. But if we beat them, we can already keep building on top of something that we already had, right? Kind of a thing where we won the last 3 best of 3s against them, things like that. So it's pretty much, one loss is not going to shake us off our game. One loss to them, maybe they're like, okay, this just keeps going, kind of a thing. But I don't think it's going to be easy. Grim seems to be doing insane twists, seems to be on point lately, at least having some highlight reel moments again. And it's going to be a good match should we get to it.
Do you kind of like that it's gone back to, well, obviously not regional count. Like we all want to play on the big tournaments and have everybody there, right? But do you kind of like we lost this for a while because we only had international tournaments. Now we have a bit of regional pride back on the line. Does that like stoke any of the flames of the guys?
I love, yeah, it does, and because one, EG and Liquid as orgs are the number one, the 2 orgs that compete as on an org level. So there's already that org level hype when one team is going to face against the other. Player-wise, EG players, they looked up to Liquid a lot of times. And now that we're past them, it's like, now is the time, bitches. Just don't let up, right? Kind of a thing. So there is that. It's like, no, we're at number 1 NA. So, and then me personally, I come from a background where I started really locally. So first I had to be the best in my neighborhood, then the best in my area, south side of Sao Paulo, then the best in my city, state, Brazil, eventually North, like Americas, then to the world. So the fact that we're still in the Americas is awesome to me. Let's first dominate the shit out of this region, get that hype going, make sure like everyone knows who's the big dick in town, and then we move on to the other side of the pond.
It's probably nice, especially like for your situation or Chet's situation or Jason's situation or even Grim, like some of these players coming in as well, to know that it's, look, we're all assuming the world goes back to normal, right? But it's almost like a soft entry. Like you're not having to deal with how moody cunts are after you get off a 12-hour flight, right? You're not having to work out who's rooming with who, or you're not trying to all rush to the counter to upgrade to business class and someone doesn't get it and they're disgruntled as fuck. Like all that shit, that baggage doesn't build up between people. You can actually start, just focus on the Counter-Strike, come in, sit at your PC, do your work, focus on the game and not worry about the social dynamic. You can deal with that later down the track when you're actually, well, obviously there's still a social dynamic, but not in the same sense of working out. Oh, fucking Cirque loves to eat at, I don't know, I can't even think of an American restaurant, but
Chick-fil-A.
There you go. He loves to eat at Chick-fil-A, but Stan doesn't really like it. But you still go there anyway because you like to keep Cirque happy before you have the game or something. Like those little trivial things, they don't exist right now. So this like soft entry for everybody, it's like you're doing online dating, right? You're kind of seeing if it all works. You're chatting a lot, you're staying up till 4 a.m. on the phone, but you're not getting the deed done. So we know when sex comes and everything gets fucked up. That's kind of how it goes. I've really gotten way too sexual with this.
That's interesting. That's an interesting line of thought.
So let's go to Group A. Striker, Furia, and Gen.G. Are you putting both of those names over the 100 Thieves?
I mean, ranking wise, they obviously are. I'm not sure if I would, to be honest.
Performance wise, like what are we thinking here? Because 100 Thieves started to drop off as well.
Yeah, 100 Thieves were one of those teams who had just had a really rough ending of the season. I'm not entirely sure how they come back from that at this point, especially like now that it's a different coach, obviously, now working with them. Previously, they were able to kind of work around it and like get into the new season in a better form. Are they going to be able to do it this time? I honestly don't know. I have no idea. It's just so hard to tell.
So what were their losses? They lost in the RMR event, the Summit one. They lost to Gen.G 2-0. They lost to Liquid 2-1. They took down Cloud9 and Chaos. And then with the DreamHack Masters, they had losses to EG Fury and Liquid. So all like
big teams,
the big names, right? Like, and I guess them being confined there, some of their runs in the past had come from upset victories or victories against European teams that have gotten them deeper in brackets and stuff. Have you practiced much against the 100 Thieves, Zeus?
Yeah, we have. I think they're definitely doing better than what they were showing, at least. Practices they have been performing. Don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I think Gratisfaction has just been killing it in practice lately. So I think he's such a big component to whether they show up or not, like the amount of impact they have. So if he keeps doing what he's doing, I think that they're the surprise. I think that in Group A, Furia is one cut above at the moment, at least from probably more time practice and not only just the rankings and everything like that. And a really big fight for that second spot because Gen.G is good team. 100 Thieves is a good team. That fight's insane. And you have Chaos on the outside who can not saying that they can. I don't think that they'll make it through, but they can fuck up one of the other two's lives, right? They could be that team that stops the other one from going through. So that group is really interesting to me.
So I think we'd all probably think that these groups are not completely clear cut, but let's say Group B, it's most likely we get Liquid and EG through. There's always chance for upsets. It is Counter-Strike, but if we're going to go with what we assume coming into this,
I mean,
Liquid,
Sorry. Well, I would just assume that the second spot in Group A is just going to be between 100 Thieves and Gen.G. But obviously, as Zeus says, like Chaos could have that upset potential there. You again see those teams, to be honest.
So where are the play? Where's the? Oh, hold up. They don't have the opening games here. Maybe I have them, but I should. Maybe I'm not meant to say them. I'm just going to shut up about that right now.
What do you mean?
Are they on your side?
I think it's out, right?
Yeah. 100 Thieves against Gen.G and then Furia Chaos.
Okay, it's because it's a GSL. It's not listed in the same way as it is with the other thing. All right, my brain's catching up. We're here. Okay, so 100 Thieves Chaos, you said.
Or 100 Thieves Gen.G.
Okay, well that's the match right there, right? Because you would assume if all things go to plan, that's the rematch in the lower bracket, assuming one of them doesn't beat Fury. So that's the one that I suppose we'll be looking out for there in Group A. But overall, with this one right here, like picking this, I find really difficult to pick like an overall winner. We're only dealing with 8 teams here, right? And I guess that the region, realistically, is quite small, all things considered. But other than MIBR being an omission, and you could maybe even debate that, considering some of the recent results, this is almost all the top dogs. Triumph don't have a 5th yet, do they? That's one of their problems. They're still a man down. So
is that Penny not with them? It's Penny, right?
SPUNJ, but that's Shakes Ula, Junior, Penny.
But Penny came in instead of Curry, so now that they also have to replace Grim.
Maybe Curry comes back. True. Maybe he's back. Maybe he's back in the team. But
I think he went to college, from what I heard. Something like that.
Fuck! People have to be adults. That's a problem. All right. Well, do we have anything else we want to? Do we want to jump into the Asian and Oceania stuff here for this? Do we? That feels almost disrespectful of me not to, but like.
I won't know what
we
I'm
all
talking
know the
about.
names, guys. We all know. You know, in Oceania, the best teams, Renegades. We all know in
I mean,
China.
it's just 4 teams in both regions. There's not much to talk about, to be honest. It's just Renegades in Australia, probably big favorites.
And Tyloo
and Tyloo have been doing really well in Asia, from what I saw. So I assume they'll just keep on going on that route.
All right. Well, what we'll do is, did you see any questions coming through for Zeus Striker that caught your eye off of any of our social media stuff?
Give me 1 second. There was one that caught my eye. Go for it.
Where is it here? Now this is this one here. I think we almost touched on it before, but I think I've seen this woman tweeting quite a bit, especially when all the Brazilian drama was going on. It's Jessica Curcio, and she was asking, what did Zeus mean when he said MIBR's problems are deep and it's in their culture? I guess that was in your interview with HLTV, right?
No, that wasn't the interview. I think it was in my release statement, and that's when I say it's in the culture. It's just that difference in personalities, like I was talking about, difference in mentalities, right? So when you have your set ways, and I have a different set way, and there's a clash of opinion, if mine is not the one that's being heard, I'm gonna think it's a difference in a culture in that sense. So that's what I meant. People assume that I meant like, oh my God, I'm talking about Fur and Fallen because they're the one that's culture there. I'm not. I'm saying like basically we had a difference of opinion. I think that my way, when the times that I should have, that things didn't go my way, I think they should have been done and something like that. And that's the difference in culture that I'm talking about. I think that there are some set mentalities that are instilled there that are too hard to change, because it's that thing that I said, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. And I'm not talking about 1 or 2. It's just every player that comes from some school of Counter-Strike has their set ways, and there are some issues that are hard to change without getting too deep into the dynamics of what we're talking about inside.
Okay. And Striker, did you find that question?
Well, there was also connected to the MIBR, unsurprisingly, which was, I'm going to phrase it a little bit differently. The question is from HLTV user Kjaerbye, I guess is the pronunciation. And it's why MIBR don't use coach. I'm going to take it a little bit different, a little bit of a different route, which is, I remember like back at PGL Major Krakow or something like that, where I'm pretty sure MIBR didn't have a coach at the time. And I just remember a conversation where it was kind of apparent that Fallen didn't really buy into the idea of having a permanent coach all the time. Obviously, since then you were back in the team, and now they again don't really have a coach outside of Dead, who's obviously been kind of more of a manager role than a coach in its own right. So how do you see this in MIBR, and how they've had, what kind of an angle they've had towards coaches?
I think that, one, they really like Dead and what he brings to the table, because people say he's not a coach, but he does do a lot of coaches' jobs, right? Like, he is the hype man. He does bring them new stuff. Like, he watches a lot of Counter-Strike. I don't know if people realize that. Like, if you look at his PC, 3 monitors, there's always 1 or 2 games going on. He'll send in the group, like WhatsApp group, hey, check out this play. It happened at round 9, 126. Like, he'll literally give you the time. If you don't go after it, it's like on you, right? So he does do a lot of that stuff. So I think that that's the angle they're going with. They don't want someone really full hands-on. They want someone to kind of keep them in line and along the lines that they want to go. And I think that is the perfect person for that. As for Fallen not liking a coach, I think his stance has changed on that a bit, but I don't think it. I think that he does like to do things his way as well. So that comes down to, okay, if there's going to be someone here to make a difference in opinion, I'd rather do it my way. And like him as the leader of that squad, it's within his right.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things, right? Like, if you take full ownership as the in-game leader, like eventually, like if things aren't working, you have to kind of just call it, right? Like that's the problem. If you're not having a coach there who in certain situations can become the scapegoat, if things aren't working, you can point fingers there. If you are going to run it that way, then I guess that means that Fallen's putting a lot on the line here, right? Because if he's not going to have that extra external voice, because Dead's been with him the whole time, it's just the same train of thought. So I guess if they're unable to reinvent things, MIBR going forward, we have to start looking in terms of how they are planning as a team. I had another question here. Now, this is more of a general one. This is from Edward. He actually is the performance coach for 100 Thieves. But he was asking, we're witnessing high levels of burnout throughout esports. What steps can ESL teams and the industry at large take to better address player health moving forward? Now, Zeus, you were talking about before that, you know, this is your everyday, this, you love it, you know, you're passionate, dedicated, all that stuff, right? But obviously burnout is an issue, and mental health is an issue for people in our industry. We've seen a lot of people go down just this year and having to take breaks. Do you think it's about choice, like teams choosing to attend less events? Do you think that it's something which needs to be looked at from a broader scale? Like, what's your take on this?
It definitely does. Like, even though I love doing it, I do get burnout effects from it. Like when we did the insane travel session, Australia, Brazil, China, like, you know, that's crazy. That destroyed like everything I had in life. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. I think like there's a few things that I'm not going to say the tournament organizer has to do, because I already know that they think, but I think some organizations should do. One thing that sounds very petty, but once you travel as much as we do when we're in session, business class flights, that thing will change your life. Like the difference from you arriving to an event, well rested, well fed, everything like that, you start off on the right foot. You don't start the event already on bad sleep, then you miss that first day of, I have to stay up until 10 at night, or else like, and then at 3 p.m. you're already asleep and you screwed up your whole tournament. So business class flights, individual rooms, because share a room with a snorer, that thing sucks, dude. If you have like all that kind of small things like that, life quality, I think help in the burnout a lot. That, along with selecting a reasonable amount of tournaments in a row that it's not exhausting, like planning maybe the trips, like, okay, we're not going to do China, Brazil, Australia because that's stupid. Let's do Brazil, Australia, and we'll stick around there for a boot camp or something. Like, it's a crazy example, but if the organizations or management as a whole, if we can plan a solid itinerary with giving players life quality, I feel that burnout goes down considerably. I take it from myself. The first 3.5 years, all I did was economy class. It got to a point where my back was hurt. This was when I was fat monster. So it was like, I literally left, like I couldn't move. My back was hurting, my knees, everything like that. Like I arrived in a horrible mood, and that just changed. So I think organizations, and the ones I've been in, I've been trying to push for this for the players, like give them this life quality, because it translates to one, life quality to them, which is important too. Results come from this. If you are more rested, you can, the first tournament you're 100%, the second one you're at 95, the third one you're at 90. Well, the team that didn't do that, the first one they already started at 90, the second one they're at 80 at most, and by the third one they're like 60%. They're pissed. Anything's a reason for a fight. So I think that those are the main points that I'm looking at right now, at least from my coaching side, what I can help to alleviate that.
Yeah, look, we've spoken about quite a lot to the scheduling and formats and tournaments and all those things on this show, and unfortunately, like I hate this. Like every year when it's coming to the close, normally about this time, I'm like, it's going to be better next year, right? It's going to be better. I genuinely believed going from 2019 to 2020 that it was going to be better, and not from the angle of, you know, things were going to miraculously, like the broadcasts were going to get better or the teams were going to have a better level, just that things were going to make a bit more sense in the calendar, right? Like the ESL Pro Tour coming, they were quite clear in where all their dates were planned. You had obviously Blast slotting in quite nicely. Flashpoint were doing a league, so we knew that, you know, if you play in their league, you can't play in the ESL league, because both they were trying to do exclusive deals. That never obviously worked out. And then the majors, and we had clear, determined periods of time for the majors. So to me, I was looking back, I was looking at the calendar, and feeling it out, working out where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, and what was looking good. It's like, holy shit, like we don't have to be on the road for fucking 4 months at a time. Like we can actually go for a couple of weeks and come home, and then, you know, have a couple of weeks at home winding down, maybe watching another event that's got, and then go to the next one. I was like, teams can be more selective, people can make more choices, everything's going to start changing in that direction. Then COVID happened, and then now we're stuck in, once we press start on the seasons of this year, it's just fucking non-stop, right? Like it's more Counter-Strike than what I think anybody possibly imagined was going to go on in 2020. So there's two parts to this. I think right now with a lot of it, because people are at home, and there are these performance specialist coaches, or all these people who are now involved, and just more adults involved around esports, having people who have experienced these things and can actually give good advice. Because a lot of the time, like I saw there was some people complaining a couple of weeks ago on Twitter because there was like advice from 30-year-olds telling 20-year-olds not to, you know, burn themselves out, and there's more to life than just this, that, and the other. Like we all go through those revelations, but the problem is you can't just fucking tell somebody that and they're going to pick it up. Otherwise, I would have eaten my vegetables, I would have done my homework, I would have fucking done everything my parents said, I didn't listen to a fucking word they said, right? So these are all mistakes that people need to learn on their own, but at least the support structures are there now if these kids need any help with any of that stuff. So we're obviously making very good steps, but I think, selective with the events in the future, not right now. Obviously now the choice isn't really there. And then, a little bit more care needing to be taken maybe from a TO side, because I heard back certain TOs just wanted their guys to go to as many events as possible, which isn't ideal. Strike, you given any more thought to this?
No, I just was just hard agree on the business class flights, because I did it once in my life. Once in my life, I wanted to try the difference, just because to see if the hype is difference. Real. It's such a massive difference. I after a 10-hour or 11-hour flight from China, I arrived home completely rested. Like after a week-long tournament or something, right? Yeah. Went back. I didn't actually sleep at all during.
Really?
It's just not bumping against anybody. I don't sleep on planes. It doesn't matter if I actually get to lie down or not. I just don't sleep. But in any case, you just don't bump against other people. You don't have to keep your elbows to yourself when you're trying to eat and stuff like that. And it's just all of these things these small things make such a massive difference to the whole experience of being on a flight, whether I sleep or not. Anyway, that's been in my case. I'm totally get it. Although I feel like it's more on the organizations than tournament organizers to provide this, because it's obviously as an organization you want your players to be healthy, right? It's not the TO's job to make you comfortable on in travel and stuff like that completely.
There's probably a little bit of compromise there. Like the TOs would need to book a certain level of ticket that can be upgraded. I'm sure Zeus, you've come into those problems before. I know that certain teams are booking their players more rooms, so we're having more teams who are now doing individual rooms and stuff, but I think we're headed in a good direction. But we're half an hour over here, so we've actually had a long show here today, which is quite nice. Now Zeus, I want to give you the floor before we shut this down. Is there anything that you want to say, anything you want to talk about, anything you want to get out there? You don't have to. It's just an option.
Just let's say CSPPA ranking, we're number 1. That's okay. It. Happy with that.
Full endorsement from Zeus.
Yeah, we back that shit all the way. No, just thanks for having me. I mean, it was last notice, but it was fun, and that's it. Glad to have this chat with you guys and everyone that watched. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And as you said, it was last minute. I got you on the Twitter about fucking 24 hours ago, and you've come, and it's been great. And it's everything I was expecting. So thank you very much for your coaching insights. I've taken a lot of notes here, mate. I've got some big thinking to do. Striker, is Prof coming back for the next one, you reckon?
It depends on how his OnlyFans career is going.
Yeah, that's true. He might be making a bit of a killing right there. Okay, so everybody, thank you for tuning in. We are looking at scheduling in shows every Monday, not the 17th, every Monday. So 24th, the 31st, the 7th. Now, this isn't locked in right now, but that's what the plan is. So for the future, every Monday, you should be able to find us. If everything goes, tweet at Martin. Tell him we need to fix the problem. He'll know what you're talking about. But you can go over to anchor.fm/HLTV, right? That's all it is. Not HLTV Confirmed, just /HLTV. There's the Twitter and shit. And big thank you to Zeus for coming and joining us. Thank you for Lucas for hanging around and dealing with all the bullshit and nothing's exploded. And thank you guys for watching yet again. Now, we kind of leave it with nice advice, but what I've been writing on my mirror every day when I wake up is say less, because I think right now, too many motherfuckers are having too many motherfucking opinions about too much shit. So let's all just calm down. Let's take a deep breath. Let's see what actually really worries us in life. And then if it's a big problem and you sleep on it, then fucking tweet. Let's all just take a chill pill, all right? Good night.